Oh, I gotta activate my virtual cam.
Oop, there it is. Hey,
There we go.
are you guys excited?
Mic check. Looks like it's all right.
I can't wait to hear what the Glover has to say.
All right, here we go. I'm a
Are
Glober.
you not going to show yourself on camera? Camera Trollius is not a very
You
convincing
notice how
name
they
here,
always
but
have
your
like a
device is
brown
not connected.
person with a
Mark, you're not going to show
cartoon
yourself
image
on
there?
camera, man?
All right, I'm in.
What's going on?
What's up, brother? Let me
All right, here,
pause
this
your
guy's on
YouTube
camera.
video. Here we go. How's it looking? Are we working? Is it working? Thanks for bringing me in. Very cool. This is my first time ever seeing you. So I just want to say, like, you seem hesitant to bring me on, and I understand, but I'll try my very best to respect all the rules and be a polite guest. Cool. I'm streaming, by the way. I'm live. Cozy.tv/BigTech. And I was having a debate with a bunch of people in my chat who joined into my Discord, and they were flat smacking me. I'm getting flat smacked. And then one of them said I should come on and talk to you because you were live right now. So here we are. And I got to admit, I know that you said that as part of the requirement, you want me to be able to prove that I was paying attention during class. But the problem is I came in probably 2/3 of the way through. So I caught the tail end of what you were going over. And I think I caught up with you. But my intention was to have like a general challenge here on flat versus globe. But what do you think, and how do you want to? Do you want to kick it off? You want to like focus it in on what we're talking about and challenge me there? That'd be fine too. So like I said, I came 2/3 in, so I'm trying to catch up. So the idea is about the ether versus you're trying to. Oh, I just didn't have the audio. Okay, I fixed it. Everybody, your audio wasn't coming through into my stream, but now it is. The idea is stationary, right? That's really
Yeah,
what's in question.
yeah. So I can show the visualization again, just so we're
Mm-hmm.
on the same page here. There's here you go. I think you can see that. So
Yep.
they shoot the light, right? And one's going with the motion of the earth, one's going against the motion of the earth. And what we see on the right is what should have been seen, right? It should have
Mm.
been separate because the light going with the motion is different than the light going against it. So the light going against the motion should have been behind. It had to travel further and you would have got an interference pattern. So you would have saw a difference in the light. This is like called the most famous Bell experiment ever. It changed all physics. This is where Einstein got his fame for solving this problem. He came up with relativity. This is like the biggest thing that's happened in modern time in physics. And this is
Yeah.
because this was supposed to happen right here. You see where it's longer, and
Yep.
that's not what they saw, right? So they didn't see that it was like the same or just a little bit off. So Einstein said, "Oh, well, we'll just dismiss that it's not the same. It's close enough. We'll say it's instrumental error." And then
Hmm.
he had to save the day. And so what they said was that apparatus actually shrank, but you just could never tell. So that light going against the motion of the earth actually did have to catch up to the earth, but you just couldn't tell because the whole apparatus shrank. And that's called length contraction or Lorentz contraction. It's top level physics today. It's in relativity. It's used everywhere, and it's never been proven. So basically, what happened, and I'm happy to hear what your take is, and maybe I'm sure if you haven't ever looked into it, you're kind of put on the spot here. It's not a great time, not a great subject for a new guy to jump in, but they show that the Earth wasn't moving, right? It was over 10 times more precise than it needed to be to detect the Earth's orbit, which is allegedly like 66,600 miles per hour, right? 30 kilometers a second. And it didn't detect it. Since then, we have billions of times more sensitive tests, still never detected the orbit. And so instead of acknowledging, oh, it looks like the Earth is stationary, what they did was make up a whole new paradigm of physics, add a fourth dimension of time, and say that the apparatus contracted, but you could never measure. So it's just like a religion kind of.
I need to look more into the apparatus contracting to understand what that means. I don't get it yet.
Yeah,
But
so like say so like the distance that the light traveling against the earth, it would have had to
mhm.
travel a greater distance because the earth's moving away from it.
Yeah.
If the apparatus shortens, then it makes up for that longer distance it would have traveled, so it'll make it look like it didn't travel a greater distance even though it did.
What would cause the apparatus to shorten?
So what Einstein says is that all objects in motion shorten. So everything that's moving shortens and contracts in the direction of motion, meaning we're both contracting right now. But the only time you really will notice a big contraction is if it gets closer to the speed of light. So Einstein in relativity just says motion. Motion causes things to shrink. And if you got to the speed of light, it would disappear. If you got to the speed of light, you would experience timelessness and time would stop moving. All this crazy.
Can I ask you a question about light then? Because this is the way that we're measuring this. What do you
Mhm.
suppose that light is traveling through? Like
I
it's an
don't
energy
actually.
wave riding on what?
Sorry. I personally don't believe light travels. That's my opinion. My opinion is light doesn't actually travel; it's already there. So I don't believe light travels. But yeah, like that was what they thought. They thought the light traveled through the ether. Einstein says it doesn't need anything to travel. I personally don't think light travels. I think it's like a water that you throw a rock into and it ripples. The water's already there. You just see the movement and the disturbance in the water, which would
So
explain
what?
double slit and instantaneous action at distance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm with you on that. So the thing is, what is that medium that is rippling?
I think it's the ether.
Uh huh.
Which
And
quantum? I can pull up a bunch of quantum physicists that agree with me.
yeah, I'm kind of there with that too. So then the thing would be that is is the ether third dimensional or is it um, separate from our experience of time?
Um, well, yeah. So time's kind of just a concept we came up with. I mean, like it's a concept we came up with to count passing in our mind based on what the sky does, like it's a
Right?
clock. But
Yep.
so yeah, it's outside of the material world. I mean,
Right.
so I guess you could say it's another dimension if you want to put it that way, but it interacts with the material world. It's like there's like a bridge between the two, right? And that's what we see when we have a vacuum chamber. We see all that energy pop in there, and they claim it
Yep.
just pops into existence, but it's actually just it's the ether, right? It's just energy coming from the ether. Um, so yeah, I would say it's outside of this material world. The reason that they can't say there is an ether is because of this experiment. That's why they're kind of at a standstill in quantum physics, because if they say that there's an ether like they used to say there was, then they have a problem with Michelson-Morley, which is why it's not just me being like nerdy and weird and talking about some like 100-year-old thing. It's like still very relevant. They can't figure out how to come up with an ether model that doesn't mean the Earth isn't moving.
Yeah. So to me, like you just said, it's something that's sort of outside of space and time. And another indicator of that is this concept that, theoretically, if we, as we approach the speed of light, we start experiencing time distortions. So there's something about the medium through which light is traveling or existing as a wave function, that thing that's rippling is actually somehow interwoven with our concept of time, meaning like cause and effect, or cause and effect, one moment after another. This momentary existence that we experience, future and past, and causality. The causality aspect of time is somehow related to this, whatever this quantum foam or this fizzling into existence. This thing is that light is a ripple of. That's how I see it. Are we in alignment on that?
Sure, somewhat. I don't buy that time slows down. Like time's a concept. So it's like relativity says time slows down, but I don't believe that that's a thing. Time like because it says it expands and time isn't physical. So it can't have physical properties. Time can't physically do anything. I mean, what happens if tomorrow we call a minute 120 seconds and now an hour's 30 minutes long? Like nothing physically changed. It's just a convention. And we looked at the sky and we came up with a time. And we think time is linear because we're human and we die and our cells degrade. So I don't really put physicality on there. It's basically a measurement convention. So I mean, yeah, basically I think that the physicality of time is actually insane. I think it's stupid. And
Hmm.
Nikola Tesla agreed. That's why he said that relativity was stupid because you can't do that. It's called a reification fallacy. So I don't know if I can't really follow you too much into the time does this and that thing because it's just relative to our convention. And technically, I would say that ether is counter space. So it's like the flip side of the coin to what we call space, what we see. It's counter space. It's like the heads to the tails type of thing. So it's just all encompassing if you want to put it that way. You know what I'm saying?
Do
It's
you believe in past? Is there not does past exist like currently? Is it still extant somewhere that we could travel to? But like, uh, I'm going to say A, and now I'm going to say B. Did I say A before B? Like, was there a sequential series of
Certainly,
events?
certainly within like our minds, yes. Like in our carnal minds, limited to matter, that's how we perceive it. Personally, I think that time is not linear. I think it's cyclical. I think that the creator exists outside of time. I think the metaphysical realm also, which would be the ether, exists
Based.
outside of time.
All
But
right.
sure, we can say that. I mean, like to us, it's always yeah. To us, you said be later, right? Like we can only perceive of it in a linear fashion. So I mean, I'm not really disputing the concept of passing as it pertains to humans. I just don't think that's the real answer.
Mm. Yeah, so it has something to do with our perception. We perceive light traveling from here to there and then back in a
Mhm.
reflection. We perceive a sequence of events. We perceive cause and effect. But there is another, level. There's another level. There's another dimension, whatever you want to call it, where there is sort of a unitary aspect to it all that's outside of time. Like you said, maybe where God is. Like that's the way of
Yeah.
where something is. It's more like there might be a crystalline existence, and we're passing through it, and that creates the perception of time. But this passing through might even be illusory in itself, more like a dream. Who even knows? But it does seem that light, and particularly the speed that light appears to travel through this thing that we call space and time seem to have something to do with the speed, like the speed limit of this wave function that we call light, which is a particle and a wave, which is also sort of paradoxical. So light itself is
Right.
sort of a bit of a mystery, and it's
It's
connected to
because
this.
of
It's
sorry, guys.
connected to this ethereal mystery that we're talking about, whatever the ether
Yeah,
is.
that's
And
exactly
so,
right.
yeah, so I'm with you on that. But the thing is that begs the question for me: does this experiment, does it A, prove that the Earth is stationary, and that's why we got a different result than we would have expected if we're traveling, or does it prove that we have a insufficient understanding of what light actually is, so our expectations were wrong?
Yeah, well, okay, so there are some people trying to save the day to propose a variable speed of light, meaning it's not constant. You know, relativity says that light is constant in all reference frames, no matter where you are. And it still won't really work, but uh I, okay, so I think that light is instant, as in it's just the ether becoming perceivable. Like it's just what's already there. So like a wave is what something does. It's not what something is, right? Like I can wave my hand, but I can't hand you a wave. Like if I have a wave in the water, well, that's the water moving. You have to have something that's moving to
Right.
have a wave. So like they
Yeah.
don't really answer that question with light, right? They just say, "Oh, it's a wave and it's a particle. Oh, it's neither. Oh, it's both. Oh, it's sentient. Oh, it transcends time." All this crazy nonsense because they have to say everything is physical and they have to count it because they're like materialists. So that's the first mistake with light, and they can't say there's an ether because you can't explain Michelson Morley with like an actual physical ether. Because you would, if there was a physical
Right.
background, that light would have been behind the other light if the Earth is shooting through space, right? Like there's really no way. That's really why the ether was done away with. In fact, it was fought against very, very strongly because that was the foundation for all electrical field theory. It was like unheard of to throw the ether out because people didn't. I mean, that's what Maxwell's equations were built on. That's what everything. That's what Tesla came. That's how he invented everything. He said that if he didn't assume a mechanical ether, he couldn't have invented anything. So, like, really, a devotion to the Copernican principle or to heliocentrism caused the ether to kind of dissolve away because they couldn't figure out a way to save it. And this is why we're still stuck. I mean, so I think it's a little deeper than just our misunderstanding of light, although we definitely do not understand light in mainstream. It's like not even close. I'm not even claiming to fully understand it, but they definitely don't, right? Like they're claiming it's two things at once. And this is all because of heliocentrism. And I know that, I mean, I get that that may not be what you want to hear, but it actually is. And it's
Hmm.
very interesting to look back at the history of it.
Okay, so I mean, I'm with you. I guess like I'm not at the point where I understand, and maybe you didn't make that already, but this you're doing a class on the problem with the Morley experiment. Um, the expectations were different than the results, so we learned that light isn't traveling through space the same way we are, whatever that means. It's something different is going on, unless you explain that there was shrinkage in the apparatus, or but they had assumptions about this thing called ether that they've had to rethink, and now it's giving birth to this whole other, like you said, it's a religion within like quantum science or something like that. So, but they're expanding their concept of what is actually going on here and what light is. But I'm with you already, like on the level of, I think light is something like an experiential illusion to us. It is an energy of some type because it does excite, it does transmit heat, or heat is transmitted with that wave somehow. It's usually correlated, and
Mhm.
it can be seen having speed differentials, as far as I understand, like redshift, blue shift, things like that. However, it doesn't. It operates in a mysterious way that's related somehow to this thing that we call space time. And so I'm kind of like looking at that as more of, we've stumbled into a mysterious thing that needs more explanation and more exploration, because it's giving results that are different than the ones we expected. So the hypothesis was this, the testing showed something else. Now we have to just come up with a new hypothesis. Are you saying that this lens, that the hypothesis is now that the Earth is stationary? Is it proving that somehow?
Yeah, yeah, it's the only way to explain. Like, so we know now the question, could there be a variable speed of light, meaning it's not constant? Like, yeah, that's I think so. Like Tesla said he sent superluminal means faster than speed of light. Like transmissions 1.5 times the speed of light. I have a paper where a guy shows he actually sent transmissions 3 times the speed of light a few years ago, and it's being like stonewalled and not published. And he gives you the experiment. You can do it with coaxial cable. So I think the speed of light's wrong, but we know that say we shoot if we like quantify what we call the speed of light, which is actually us just counting how fast we see light. It's already
Hmm.
there. It just becomes illuminated and we count it, we quantify it. It's not traveling, right? It just becomes illuminated. But anyway, we have that convention, and if we shoot a light beam on the earth in different directions, it always goes that same number. It's always like illuminates, or they say travels at the same speed, right? So using that, which we can do a million times and show that's the case, whenever you do the Michelson-Morley, we know that those light beams are going to be going the same speed, or they're going to be illuminating at the same rate. There's no reason for them not to, because the only thing that's different is that they're different angles. There's just different directions, right? Like one's going perpendicular to the other, and they did it throughout the whole year. They changed the orientation of the table over and over. It's like always the one that was perpendicular was a little bit off, but they threw it out, and it never showed a difference. So there has to be, see, with even if you throw the ether out, like the heliocentric model still had to explain why it was different, why it wasn't separate, more so, right? Like why the light wasn't behind the other light. The heliocentric model still had to explain it, even when they threw the ether out. And so they said that matter contracts. Do you agree that to claim that, oh well, we have a hypothesis, the evidence doesn't match our hypothesis, so let's just say that the measurement apparatus physically contracted, but you could never measure it and you could never prove it. It just has to be that way because we know the Earth is moving. Like, don't you agree that that's like not science at all? That's like borderline religion.
Yeah, that sounds
That's
crazy.
insane.
That doesn't sound like that would
Yeah,
make sense. Yeah, I wouldn't accept that answer. I would go like, okay,
it's crazy, bro.
you're coping because you couldn't figure it out. So now you're just making a BS to fill in the blanks.
Correct. Yeah, and that's why it's like crazy. Most people haven't heard of this. People get annoyed I talk about it so much, but I just know it's very important because that changed all of physics. I mean, people still think that's real. People still think relativity is true.
Hmm.
And so if we go back to the drawing board, we have an option, right? We can perfectly explain Michelson-Morley if we just take away the assumed orbit of the Earth. Now that doesn't make the Earth flat. That it just means the Earth's not moving. Now, I mean, then you're going to get an interesting conversation like, oh, it's just a globe just sitting there still, and then we could get into that, right? But it's not moving. And then when you start looking into all the evidence, it's like, oh, well, you've heard of maybe the cosmic microwave background where it showed the Earth was the center, and they called it the evil of axis. And then they just said, oh, well, it must look like you're the center everywhere you are in the world.
Hmm.
Like every time that they get evidence the Earth's not moving and it's at the center, they throw it away. And Edwin Hubble says, he admits it's like a religion. He's like, you could never disprove that the Earth is in a central position. It could never be disproved. But we disregard it because of the horror of a special and unique position, right? And so it's like, oh, so you're like, oh, I don't know if they're scared. Are you scared of there being a creator? Right? Like, what did you do in your life that horrifies you? Why are you invoking emotion? This is science, right? So
Hmm.
basically, it's well known. I have a stream called Geocentrism where I show all the physicists admitting it. But anyway, all I'm saying is it's not just Michelson Morley that shows the Earth's not moving. It's everything. It's everything shows the Earth's not flying through space. Um,
Hmm.
so it's just interesting, man. It's interesting. This is the linchpin of it, though, uh, and you'll never hear it talked about, which is weird. And there's a reason why, because they don't have a good answer still.
Okay, I'm brand new to this idea, and so, but it's begging a question for me personally. Like, what if is it possible that this thing that light is that the photon is, you know, sparkling through whatever that wave and particle that it is, the thing that we're not calling ether anymore, or it is whatever that
Mhm.
is. Could it be that it, in the same way that us globetards think that the atmosphere is rotating around the Earth in unison with the rotation of the Earth, could it not
Mhm.
be that there's a localized space-time experience that's rotating with the Earth? And if there was, I think that would explain why there wasn't a deviation and the one going against the Earth didn't show up out of alignment.
Mhm. No, that won't work because you would have to claim that all of space-time is moving through space, which doesn't really make sense, and it's on its face, like space-time moving through space. But it would, whatever you're saying, like hypothetically, like some space-time phenomena, that would have to not. It's not just like spinning around the Earth. Like it would be flying around the sun with the Earth. And the
Yep.
problem with that is they relativity claims that space-time bends and warps and causes all the other planets to go around the sun, right?
Yep.
So there's this huge gravity well from the sun, and all the other planets go around it. So if you're now going to throw another gravity well in there that's moving around the sun, right? That's like the space time's moving with it, additional to the other space time. It'll throw off the entire like relativity math wouldn't work at all, which it doesn't anyway. But no, I don't see a feasible way to claim that the space-time just I guess technically speaking, they claim that anyway, right? Like they claim in a way that space-time does go with the Earth, and they claim that the mass of the Earth bends and warps space-time,
Yeah.
and that when since it's doing that, it's causing time to slow down,
And
and it's
that's why
causing matter to contract.
I think that would be essentially, I'd be talking about the same force, like the gravitational field that causes light to bend as it goes. Like sometimes they can spot planets that they can't see, and they can do it by seeing movement in the lights that they normally observe with the observatory. They're watching the light, and then it moves a little bit, and it moved because a planet passed between the observatory and that beam of light, what caused it to bend around because of the
Mhm.
gravitational well of that massive energy. And even they look at dark, they call it dark because you can't see it, but there's energy wells out there that we don't understand, massive objects that are bending light. So the
Yeah.
fact that light can bend means that it's passing through a substrate that is affected by the presence of mass. So
Yeah,
couldn't
it
it
makes
just be
sense
that
that
the
that
mass of the
substrate.
planet has its own thing that the light's passing through, so it's moving relative to the rotation of the Earth?
Well, it would make sense if that substrate was physical, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, they do claim that. Like that's like the Eddington experiment. They claim that they saw a star behind the eclipse, and they claim that they did gravitational lensing, and it moves like 1/10,000th the width of a neutron or something crazy like that, which is just nonsense. But it makes more sense if it's like a dense medium. Actually, if there's like a fluid-like medium in what we call space, then it would make way more sense for it to bend. But there's no evidence for like space-time bending and warping, and that these lights are thousands of miles away. And they call it dark because they can't see it, right? Or it doesn't interact with the electromagnetic spectrum, and because they don't know what it is. So they don't know what it is. We don't know it's there. We know it's there if we assume relativity is true,
Yeah,
and
because
if
the
we
math says
assume the
that it
universe is
must be there. Yeah, when we
exactly,
account for the mass
exactly.
that we can observe, there's an unobserved amount of mass that's
Yep,
required to make the numbers add up. Yeah, I'm aware.
yep.
Yeah, so
It's
there are
bad,
some
bad, bad.
holes.
It's not even close. Like it's not even close.
Well,
Ninety-six
look,
percent of it is off. So.
I've engaged with you on your terms, which is that we stick just with this subject and
Mhm.
um, this experiment. And I don't know if there's a point where we can get to maybe where I've satisfied that I've heard you out and we're dealing with this, and I'll need to go on my own and see if, there's always two sides to the tale or whatever, and I'll see what else I can learn about it. But in general, I was sent over here because I was dealing with the flat Earth concept, and I was talking to a person who's telling me that there's no such thing as gravity, and it's just like density, and that's gases are pushing things down to the ground, and like heaviness comes from density, not gravity. And the moon is actually quite far away. And we were dealing with all of these things that are essentially the consequences of giving up the globe model requires a
Mhm.
replacement with another model. And without a model that makes as
Flat
much
Earth
sense as the
Retard sent
globe,
$3. The first
it's
interesting thing I
difficult
saw is the
to be
UN
willing to
logo is
move
an old
on.
flat Earth map.
So
Same
I would
reason
want to
why I
ask
think
you, like,
space is
what's the
Seuss is because
model that to you makes sense? I'm muting this for myself here.
symbolism and who not to trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's
So
yeah? Where are you at with that? Can we go there?
yeah, I don't care. You've been
Epic.
respectful. So okay, I would actually disagree with you that it requires a replacement. Just to get that out there, like logically speaking, falsification is independent of replacement, right? Like if you tell me Santa's real and I prove Santa's not real and Santa's not coming in my house, I don't have to like come up with a new character that put the presents there or whatever, right? Like
Mm,
falsification is independent of replacement, but um, yeah, I think the Earth is within a torus field, and we're in what's called the inertial plane, and it has the sacred geometry, or people call it the flower of life, within that torus field, and you can see this in a magnetic field with a ferrocell, and this is a pattern everywhere. And if you look at the Earth, or if you look at the sky from the Earth being central, then all the patterns of the planets fall right within that flower of life. The heliocentric model just claims that's a coincidence, I guess. They don't even acknowledge it. So that's the basis of what I would call anything to do with the model. I don't agree that we need one because, ironically, the globe doesn't have one. So it's like it is. I understand why people think it does because they have a claimed answer for everything. Everyone believes it. Everyone thinks it works perfect. All this stuff, but it doesn't. It actually doesn't work. So I think the first step would be to look at that. I do actually have a pretty good quote unquote model. One of the main hiccups is we were lied to about the Earth, so we don't have like all the answers to the map itself. But I am working on a whole lot of things with specific math and calculations and stuff. But of course, I'm one guy, and this was built upon hundreds of years and millions of people and billions of dollars, including the government making up this other story. But so like I disagree. I don't like if we falsify the globe, I don't even see that it has standing that it can say you need to replace me because it's falsified. Like you don't have a globe model, like they claimed that the earth has a core and then all these different layers. So we could start at the very center and start out and work out. It's wrong from there, right? Like we dug 7 miles down and the globe model's predictions, the whole 7 miles down were disproven. So we don't even know what's under the earth in the globe model. It made predictions and it's wrong,
mm-hmm.
right? So it's like, I mean, I can give you a much more sufficient answer for quote unquote gravity than just density. I disagree with that. It's not just density, but yeah, I can offer viable alternatives for the vast majority of things that the globe claims, but a lot of it isn't verifiable. A lot of it is looking out in the sky and theorizing and not scientifically theorizing, right? Just colloquially. So, I mean, I can come up with a replacement. I just think that's an improper way to think about it because I saw a lighthouse from 70 miles away and it should have been blocked by an insane amount of we saw mountains 250 miles away. And like they can say that it's just magic, but it's not. Like you can do it yourself. And when you do it yourself. So anyway, I'm kind of rambling, but like, yeah, I don't believe in the globe model because I found out that it's built upon a bunch of assumptions and lies. And now I'm working on figuring out what's really going on bit by bit. If you wanted to ask a specific question as to like gravity, I could tell you. Or if you wanted to ask what I think about this or that, eventually we're going to get to some questions that I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what the moon is. I don't know what it is. I document all the time. I don't know what it is. It looks like maybe some plasma. We have stars and planets shining through it. I don't know what it is. It's like, I don't really need to know what it is, though, to know that in 69 people didn't walk on it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm,
Like, that's the major, I get it. It's a hiccup. Let me give you this analogy because I'm talking so much. Say that I'm like at my parents' house and I go into the hallway and I'm digging through the closet and I find a box that says "Do not open." And I open
yep.
it and it's got this folder on it with my name on it. I open it up and it says I'm adopted. It's adoption papers. Okay? And I'm like, I'm 30, right? So I'm like, what the hell? My whole life's a lie. I go tell my friend, dude, you'll never believe what happened to me. Uh, I found out that I'm adopted and my parents have been lying to me, right? My whole life's a lie. Those aren't my parents. And then my friend says, "What? No way." I'm like, "Yeah, look, check. Here's the evidence." He's like, "Wait, wait. So who are your real parents then?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I don't know yet." He's like,
Hmm.
"Oh, well, then I don't believe that those aren't really your parents." I'd be like, "What?" I'm like, Here's the evidence, dude. They adopted me. They're not my parents." He's like, "No, until you can figure out who your real parents are, then I'm just gonna believe that those are your parents." You see what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't logically make sense. And then they go on to say, "Oh, well, everyone in the town believes that that's your parents." So then they just appeal to what everyone else thinks. It doesn't really
Hmm.
make sense logically speaking if I can prove that they're not my parents. I don't have to figure out who my parents are before we know that they're not my parents. So, yeah, that's a long way of saying. I actually disagree with that. I coined the phrase falsifications independent of replacement because of that. But um, I'd be happy
Yeah,
to
I agree with
discuss
that.
different things.
That's actually that's a valid syllogism there. You're right that you don't have to have a replacement of a thing in order to falsify the thing. But you've made an analogy or a metaphor there that I would say that to me, I'm looking at it and it seems like a totally different metaphor. It seems like with the Santa one, it's like for all of the childhood of humanity, they thought the earth was flat, so they believed in Santa. And then one day, Copernicus or wherever it actually began discovered things that led us to believe, oh, it's actually dad is putting the presents under the tree while we're asleep. And now you're saying, I'm disproving that it's dad. I'm not saying it's Santa, but I don't know who's doing it, but it's not dad. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
but we all
yeah.
think it's
Santa's
dad.
not as
And
good of an analogy. Santa's not
and
as good of
or
an
or,
analogy as
or
the
even the
adoption.
adoption one, I would go, okay, the whole your whole life in early childhood you thought these were your real parents, but then Copernicus or the science came along and discovered these documents that shows that you've been adopted. And now
Mhm.
for in recent times we've all been going on the adoption story, and now you're coming along and debunking the document and saying, no, this doesn't look like a valid document. I think you're not adopted and they're not your parents. We don't know who your parents are now. And it's like, all right, they're not your parents. Got it. You're
Wow.
adopted. But you also weren't adopted. So what is it though? And you're like, it's a toroidal flower of life. I don't know what the moon is. And it's like, well, we got it. Do you actually have parents? Like, it's like, what can we nail down? And how useful
Mhm.
is it to throw out what was believed before without having any inkling of what's actually going on? And I'm not saying you don't have any, but there's going to be some that are kind of biggies. And I get you that there's sketchy things about the moon landing story. Um, I get that,
It's
and
stupid.
it's a time where there were people who would have benefited from having been able to fake it, and so like there's motive, and there's sometimes the astronauts, their stories don't line up, and all the rest of it. There's a million things.
Mhm.
However, let me just ask then, like you said right off the bat, I mean, some of it's kind of diffused. If you're willing to just say, well, I just don't know, that's great. But let's get into what maybe do you have a working theory of like what makes things that go up come back down? And
Yeah.
actually before that, let's make that one number two. Number one, do you believe that it's a flat plane, and how does the toroidal energy field fit into that?
Yeah. Okay. So this is a ferrocell image of a magnetic field. So I think that we would live within something like this because we know we have a magnetic field in the Earth. This is the only way that they exist. Like
Mm-hmm.
this, also like this. If you see the bottom left here, you see that line through the middle. That's a plane. So we would be on that plane. So that's why, because if you look at this, if you see the flower of life in there in the top left, the if you take it from a geocentric position and look at the planets fit within that perfect. And that is not a coincidence. But so that's how it works into it. Is if someone wants a model, I'm like, oh well, here's a starter. Like imagine living within that. And then to me, that's actually much cooler than this cartoon globe that they admit's not real. But I will say you did kind of hijack
But
my
isn't that
analogy, right?
isn't that thing spherical though?
Uh, that's what's also interesting. So there would be a bottom of this as well. So that's not a sphere as much as that's like a plane with a dome. But you see, like, yeah, so if you zoomed all the way out from the Earth, there would be a sphere. And we live on a plane through the middle of it. They hijacked the celestial sphere and they said that we live on the sphere. And that's a whole thing. I mean, because technically we see with spherical geometry, they said it's Euclidean geometry, and they said that we see in straight lines on a spherical Earth, when in fact we see in curved lines on a flat Earth, and it's a whole thing. Same thing with how they celestially navigate with the
But
If you go
wait,
to Stellarium, you'll see it's a dome over a flat Earth. That's how they show you how the sky works. They use a dome, right? So it's a sphere in the sense you could draw a big circle around the whole Earth, but we live through the middle of it. So, I mean, I
okay,
will say that the
wait.
analogy, I guess you're saying, just to clarify, I guess you were saying with the analogy basically that people used to think it was flat, and then they came along with quote unquote science and then discovered, oh, it's a
Okay.
globe that spins in revolves. Is that what you were saying? It's like my
It's your
point still
show, so I want to
remains.
let you. I don't want to be rude and cut you off, but you kind of gave me an answer, and you're moving on to the second
Okay,
part.
go
But
ahead.
the
Go ahead.
answer I have a question about. So the thing
Uh-huh.
that you just showed me, I'm not trying to do a gotcha, but I think you just showed me a cross section and then pointed at the middle as a straight line. But I know a torus is like a donut. There's no flat plane to be on inside of a donut. Like if
Oh
you
yeah,
cross section
there
it, you see a straight line up the middle, but that's the cylinder in the middle of a toroidal sphere.
Okay, so it's called a block domain wall. All right. I'll show you. It's called a block domain wall, and it's in every permanent magnetic field. And if you look at it under magnetic film or ferrocell, you're gonna see that it sucks because they don't even show real pictures. You'll see there's always a plane right through the middle of it. So there is a plane. Like there's a plane in all magnetic fields. It's called the block domain wall. I call it an inertial plane because that's actually describing what it is. But and actually, I've never got an answer. Where would the inertial plane be on a globe? Because we know the magnetic field has one. So where's that? And I just get a bunch of sophistry. But it's not that we just
it's a
drew a
flat
line through the
plane
middle
like
of
a
it.
plate. Isn't it a plane? Isn't it a vertical
Well,
axis?
that's just because, yeah, that's because we took it from the side, right? So like right here, that line would be on like basically the floor of that, right? Like in the second half of this would be underneath it. You can't even see it in this picture. I wish I could figure out a better picture for you, but anyway, what I'm saying is, you've ever seen little green magnetic films? You can take that and you can put it over a magnet and you can kind of see the field, right? If
Yeah.
you put this over a magnet, if you put that green sheet over a magnet, you will see that there is a plane. It's just a clear plane. Where there's black on the north and south part of the magnet, there's always just this clear plane through the middle. It's called the block domain wall. And I don't find this to be a coincidence,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
but it appears as a plane because you're putting a flat piece of film, but it's actually
yeah.
it's a spherical phenomenon that's
Mhm.
occurring in the magnetic field. But you're
No,
introducing a plane with the flat strip.
look, I'll show you. Here's a depiction of a magnetic field. So this is, you see the
Right.
green line through the middle. That would be a plane. So yeah, there's a sphere around the whole thing. You could draw a circle around the whole thing. Technically, it's actually a torus field, right? And you have the toroid and the hyperboloid through the inside. You have centrifugal divergence, centripetal convergence, this whole thing. Of course, mainstream doesn't understand magnetism either at all, and they claim it's virtual particles, just almost as bad as light. But um, there's a plane through the middle, though, for
Hmm.
sure. Like I'm trying to find it for
So you're
you.
just saying it would basically be perpendicular to the vertical axis inside of the magnetic field.
Yes.
Yeah. In
Yeah.
360 degrees, so that would make a plate. Yeah, all right, I'm
Yeah.
following you.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, it's topographical. It's topographical plane. Obviously, I don't like the word flat Earth at all. I think it's like totally sucks. But like I
Right.
believe in the scriptures, and I don't believe it. I don't like mainstream Christianity. If someone asks me, I'm a Christian. I'm not. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna talk about it. I think flat Earth is a psyop term. All I'm saying, it's topography.
Okay, then let's go on. I got a concept of what you're thinking about. That's interesting. Um, do you have any concept of what's generating that toroidal um, vortex, that magnetic energy field?
Yeah. So neither sides of the discussion have a very provable answer to that, but I would say it's in the where they claim the North Pole is would be the source of the field. Um, what's generating it? It's a good question. I mean, what's generating all the movement? I don't know. There seems to be a huge source of energy that everything moves around in the center of the sky, and I personally would say whatever the all powerful omniscient force of the sky is the creator probably. But people aren't really ready for that. I like the magnetic field comes from the center of the surface of the Earth, just like
Hmm.
here. There's
Yeah.
that black hole in the middle, yeah. And
Right.
then of course, the bigger that black hole gets, actually, the stronger the field gets, which most people don't know that it's not. It's the black part that gives you the magnetic field. And this would
So
play
that's
into the
somewhere.
phenomena of gravity as well.
That's somewhere at the North Pole. Yeah, that's where it
Hmm.
would have to be, right?
Yeah, which it's
And
so
so,
dangerous. You can't fly there. You can't go there. They don't have infrastructure to save you, so they don't let you go there. Very
is that right?
convenient. Same with the same with the South Pole,
Hmm.
which is crazy. I'm sure you've heard you can't just go to Antarctica, right?
The thing is, I've heard that, but I haven't been able to see anybody get turned away. I understand that there's some sort of permitting required, but as far as I
Mhm.
understand, that's just because it's sort of like an internationally contested space that's been settled for scientific and engineering purposes. And they just don't want,
Mhm.
what if just anybody who wanted to get on their boat could go down there and build a settlement? And now there's people, and just like, it'd be like Wild West in the snow if there was no permitting of who was allowed down there. So somebody's got to control it. But I haven't seen evidence of anybody going down there to see if there was an ice wall and being like, "Fuck you, you can't come here." Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cuss. That was
It's okay.
accident. But being like, aggressively, turn back, military space or something. Like, I haven't seen an
Yeah.
expedition that wanted to go that wasn't able to.
Well, there actually was a Norwegian guy that got arrested a couple times. If you go down past the 60th south latitude without approval, you will indeed be intercepted. But it's not really about an ice wall or anything. I don't even buy into that. There's necessarily an ice wall. There could be, but the reason Antarctica is important, if here's a ball, right? Like you would circumnavigate. So like we circumnavigate the Earth east to west every day. So that works on both a flat or globe, right? So like the north to south only works on a globe. You
Mm-hmm.
could just definitively shut down flat Earth. It'd be so easy. You would just start at the North Pole, you'd go all the way down to the South Pole and keep coming back to the North Pole. That's why Antarctica is important, right? We need to be able to go over Antarctica, come back up on the other side of the ball. And no one's ever done it. And yeah, you can try to get a
Why don't the
permit, but
flat
it costs.
earthers do it?
Well, okay, so there's an application and a permit fee, which is usually thousands of dollars. You have to give them 3 months advance notice in the US. You have to tell them who you're bringing, what you're doing, can't bring external fuel supply, external water supply, and you have to send them your route and tell them your activities. They tell you up front that the route of going directly over the center is not permitted because it's too dangerous and they don't have the infrastructure to rescue you in case of emergency and they don't have communicative abilities, so they will not approve a direct the route we need to go. Long story
Mm-hmm.
short. So I mean, we could go. Like I mean, like my wife's grandparents just went. It cost 20 grand. They didn't even get off the boat. We have a flat earther that used to work for NASA, was stationed there for 6 months. He only went so far inland, right? Like going there would really just be a waste of money. I don't care about looking at some ice. I want to go over the continent and come back over. Now there are people that claim to do it, and I'm sure you'll see like people in your chat will say it. People always just say things. It doesn't. No one's ever done it. And to me that was like really weird. Like before I even really knew the Earth was flat, that's just weird to me that no one's done that. Why would someone not do that? Right? Like that makes no logical sense that someone wouldn't circumnavigate the Earth. Flat Earth is actually very debunkable. And conveniently, all the things that would debunk it are never done. Just like zooming in on a plane upside down from space and us being able to see the same plane, or showing us stars in space, showing us legitimate positions of stars, which show us relative to where we are. We could be on the Earth and we could look and we could verify everything. We could look at what's in the sky coming down, showing us a rocket come back in. You'll never see any of these things. You'll never see the fourth wall in space. So it's because they're lying. Like obviously that's not
The
evidence.
fourth wall in space?
Yeah, like like on a if you make a movie, you'll never see the fourth wall because that's where the director and the producers are and everything. You'll never see an astronaut take a camera and do a full 360. It's never happened. And same thing when Elon Musk put his car out in space, right?
Mm-hmm.
He took. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
Yes, he said it like it's real because it looks so fake or whatever. But they said we put the car out there just like it was, but they didn't actually. They took the mirror off, the rear view mirror. Why would they do that, right? Like what? Because it would show the fourth wall. What does it weigh, like an ounce or something? You have the real tires on there. You have tires in a vacuum. That's stupid. The paint would chip because of the sun with no atmosphere and blah blah blah. But there was a mirror that, of course, you could see the back behind it. They took it off, and it glitched out live and showed the studio. It's just a whole bunch of crazy stuff, bro. It's the rabbit hole of rabbit holes. I mean, I get it. I don't know what your channel is. If you're on Cozy TV, I'm assuming you do speak some truth, right? Like, isn't that where Nick Fuentes is?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm on Nick's
Yeah. So I mean,
network.
I'm assuming you're on there because you speak some
Right.
truth.
We're here to speak freely. Right.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll respect that for sure. Because because I know that's one of the few places that didn't mess with him. So yeah, I don't know
Well,
if
he
you
owns
already.
it. Yeah, it's his
Okay, okay,
place.
that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah, makes sense. Um, so that's cool. But so I definitely support anyone that speaks regardless of what people say. But it's just a crazy subject, bro. I mean, I'm gonna be upfront with you too. You're gonna get tons of backlash if you were to ever really like publicly consider it. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not. But I don't like it doesn't matter, right? Like hypothetically, if they lied about the earth, you would want to know. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would. I mean, that's the thing is that I got sort of sucked down the rabbit hole several years ago, and what I saw were a lot of questions that, as I peered like a little bit, if I took time to consider rather than just sort of like letting it pass through and being passively interested and being like excited, like wow, what is this? Because it is sort of exciting. Anytime you discover a potential new mystery that needs to be
Yeah.
solved. There's some sort of it's sort of special, you know. And so
Yeah.
there's an appeal, there's a sheen and a shine that the subject has. I even saw the giant ancient mega trees, and I'm sure you've seen that one with the silicone mega trees theory. I don't know what you think about it.
It's
I
very
remember that.
interesting, man. It's very
Yeah, it
interesting.
is. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I even
Like
saw a new
mountains
one
that look
recently.
just like
Yeah, a guy went and he found this gigantic rock, and it's like sheared in half, and he went in the crack, and there's just rings all through the rock, and I'm like, and
yeah. What are the
it's
odds?
many meters wide, and
That's cool.
I go, I don't
I mean,
get
I
it.
lean towards there were giant trees. Yeah.
So yeah, there are mysteries, and then the megalithic structures and who built the pyramids and Göbekli Tepe and all the rest of it. It's like, yeah, dude, it's a never. And the mud floods, like I've checked all this stuff out, and it's all fascinating. I love it. But the flat Earth stuff, I found what when I started having a different taste come into my mouth with regard to the flat Earth stuff when I started realizing that there were people using the wrong formulas when they go out on the ice, the frozen ice lake, and I go, oh, this guy's just not being very precise, and things like that, and they're going, and then and some of they take it too far with the moon mission debunking, and I go like, well, no, wait a minute, that little thing that floated across, there's another answer for that, and they're just
Yeah.
claiming all of this. There's just so much like garbage that's lumped in
I agree
together,
with
and I went,
that. Yeah. I agree.
it became that I didn't want to be associated. It became less shiny after we're like, oh, it looks like this is actually just sort of like bait for retards. Forgive my French, but that doesn't mean that I'm not interested in a new idea. But I am looking for evidence. Like evidence is such a shallow word, but like a real smoking gun that shows what is actually going on. And like I said, I hijacked your analogy. It's like, all right, so we thought these were your parents. Then we found the documents that said you were adopted. But now we're finding like we're nitpicking the document and debunking the document. And now we're kind of left with like, well, what? And now we're like, did I just fall from the sky? Did I just spawn inside my parents' house? And is there's no such thing as parents anymore? Like we're getting into a weird place where
Yeah.
I need it to be grounded a little bit better. And so
I think you're looking at it the wrong way, bro. You're taking the analogy for sure, but like look at it like this. Like, okay, if it's been drawn into question, because you're basically assuming that the adoption papers exist for the globe, right? You're assuming that has been established. You found the folder with the evidence of the globe, but that doesn't exist. So it's like
well, here,
if you
let me
were
stop
to
you.
if you were
Let me
to
give you
just
something real
start,
quick, and then
yeah,
then continue this. When I look at the moon and I see the shadow on one side that
mhm,
creates the crescent,
yeah,
to me, I'm looking at it and it completely computes in my mind that I'm looking at a spherical object that has light on one side of it. And so to
mhm.
say I don't know what the moon is when I'm like it looks like a sphere in the sky. Why if the thing isn't a floating sphere, why does it look exactly like a floating sphere to me?
Yeah.
And it's like, if these are not adoption papers, why does it look? Are you telling me I was like kidnapped and my parents are actually kidnappers? Like, what are you exactly telling me? Like, is this a giant hoax? I live inside of a trick. Why would God create a flat toroidal experience like with a plasma thing that looks like a sphere but ain't one? Like, am I being Truman showed here? Like, why does it look like a sphere and you're telling me it isn't a floating sphere?
Well, first of all, even if the Earth was or the Moon was a sphere, that wouldn't make the Earth one. But see, if you look, if you, I can give you answers, right? I can show you. I can actually replicate at like a holographic projection with polarizing lenses that will look real. I can replicate the cycles. I can replicate the craters, the 3D texture, all of that. You can walk over there and put your hand through it. And this happens with magnetic holography, and there's lots of evidence for this and stuff, et cetera. Right? So I can give you an answer, but it's kind of like if we went with your same logic, well, then let's apply it to the earth instead of, because like if I walk into a room and say, look, there's a light bulb, therefore my floor is a light bulb, that doesn't make sense. If we apply your logic, like, is God tricking us, right? And I say, yeah, like, hallelujah. But like, is the creator tricking us? Well, if I go out and I see the horizon, it's horizontal. I don't feel the earth moving. At times it gets so still, nothing's moving. The wind moves both ways and in all directions relative to the earth not moving. When I fly a plane, I see the horizon's horizontal when the plane has to fly like the earth's flat and not moving. When I see the sun and the moon in the sky, they look like they're the same size. When I see giant bodies of water, they're flat. Every time I ever see any water, it finds its level. If I tilt my water bottle everywhere, it finds its level. Water always does that. I see huge bodies of water, they look flat, right? Except for the swells and waves, of course. We use it as if it's called sea level. Everything on the surface using Occam's razor, that which requires least assumption, is
Yeah.
that analogy is going to, or that logic's going to backfire on you, which is ironically what I was about to say to you, which is
Huh.
if you just kind of step back, even if the Earth's a globe, I think the healthy way to do it is to step back and to look at everything on its face, figure out, well, okay, say I'm a caveman, right? And I walked out, like, what would be my default position? My default position would be I don't feel the earth moving. I see the stuff in the sky moving. I see the horizon not moving. Now, I know it's not a good look to say, like, if you want to be a flat earther, be a caveman. But you see what I'm saying? Like if we just take out what men have told us and
Yeah.
then we actually look at it for what it is, it actually shows us the earth's not moving. It shows that the earth is a plane, and it shows us that the sky moves, stuff in the sky moves. So now we need to investigate the other claim. People have it backwards where they're like, oh, you have a tons of burden of proof to replace the globe. But in fact, the globe is making a claim that everything we observe is the opposite of the truth. And that basically the creator put us here as the author of confusion. And he gave us senses that can't tell anything about reality. And it feels like we're stationary, but we're moving and we're tilted and we're wobbling. And it looks like the sun's moving, but it's sitting still relative to us and we're flying around it. And it looks like the sun and the moon are the same size, but they're different sizes. In fact, the moon is 400 times smaller in diameter than the sun, just coincidentally exactly 400 times closer as well. Blah, blah, blah. Like, actually, that logic is one of the crucial points that puts people in this position. Because then they're like, well, I need to figure out the legit scientific or empirical evidence to support the claim that everything is the opposite of what we see. And
No,
once
I
you look
think
at it like
it's
that, it's going to get pretty crazy.
I think it's the exact opposite of what you just said. The author of confusion made the world that you're telling me about. Like I said, the moon looks like a sphere, and as soon as the concept dawns upon me, that the reason why nighttime happens is because this ball that I'm on has rotated out of access to the sunlight, and now I'm in the shadow of the earth. That makes perfect sense. It's absolutely exactly what I would expect to observe. The sunset being light that's going through a different density of atmosphere because there's a thicker aspect of it at the edge between. Like, it all makes sense to me. Like I said, the shadow on the moon, and then you're inserting these things like water finds its level, as if like water has some sort of like principle of consciousness that it imbues
No.
upon. No, but it's really water just flows downhill. And so what you're talking about is gravity. Water flows downhill. Water doesn't find level. Water just flows downhill. And that's the same. It's two different ways of saying the same thing, but it doesn't find level. So you're saying like water and level are somehow related, but no, water just flows downhill is what we experience all day long. It's like every single river and stream you've ever
fluid
seen.
in water. I mean, we put like fluid in levels, right? We use the
Yeah.
the water. To
Yeah, true.
level
And then
things.
exactly because you have a curved vial that has a part in the middle that's higher, and the air bubble rises to the top and the water flows downhill so that the air at the top indicates the middle. So it's because of the curve of the level that you are able to find the upright center for the flatness. There's a curved vial in there. So it's like it's literally flowing downhill in the level. That's even a
I don't
good
dispute
example of
it
what I'm
flows
saying.
downhill. I
Yeah,
definitely don't
so
dispute that.
so to say it finds its level, it's no, it just flows downhill. It's like, but that doesn't mean that water is level. So that's you're doing even as subtle as it might be, and even as unintentional as it might be. It's sort of like a word trick saying water finds its level and everything's a plane. It's like it doesn't find its level. It just flows downhill. That's
Called
what it
fluid
does.
statics. It's called fluid dynamics and fluid statics. It's physics that water finds its level. Obviously not sentience, but it's called fluid statics. On the
Yeah,
globe, it claims
sure,
water is
sure.
level. It's just that level means curved over immense distances, and we call it sea level. That's how we
Well,
get
level
elevations.
level is also not saying it's not saying sea flatness. It's saying this is
Right. Well,
the
that's yeah.
the level of elevation that you're at is the level of the sea. Like you're
That's what
level
the
one, level
globe
two,
claims.
level three. We're using level in a different terminology versus flatness. We're not talking about
Well, it means
flat. We're talking
equal distance above. So the globe claims like it's actually curving, but at an equal distance above.
yeah. You're
Uh,
at equal distance above the core or equal
yeah, that's
distance
what it says.
below the sky. That's where the water. Yeah, that's where the
That's
sea is.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
what the
So the
globe says.
coastline is going to be generally equal. Except for the tides. And by the way, well, no, that would be. I don't want to go on the rabbit hole of the tides because I'm sure you would just say, well, actually, I'm not sure. Let's do it. How do you explain
Yeah,
the
let's do
tides
it.
in your model? What causes the tides?
Um, well, like I said, my first step is always to look at the globe model and see what it claims. I mean, I don't really know exactly what it is. I think that it's just a cyclical pattern within the toroid. And if you look at the depiction of the toroid, it goes in and out. And that's actually what the tides do, coincidentally, on the Earth. That it goes in and out. So it seems like there's a motion within the torus. But actually, the globe can't explain the tide. We have tidal nodes, which are places that nothing happens. And the globe just calls it an anomaly and ignores it. There's a tidal node, completely debunks it. It claims that the moon is tidally locked to the earth, pulling the earth, but at the same time on the opposite side of the moon we have tides of the same magnitude going the opposite direction. So that doesn't even make sense. So it's like it's saying it pulls the earth towards us, but the water stays displaced over there, but it pulls the water towards it on its side, and it just happens to be perfect on both sides. And then, of course, it doesn't affect other bodies of water. It doesn't affect like lakes. There's all kinds of problems with the globe model. That's admittedly, according to Harvard, that's admittedly like one of the weakest parts of the globe, the core and the tides. Their current model doesn't answer everything, but yeah, like I mean, to me, it's like it's cool they came up with a theory, but if their theory's wrong, it's like I don't have to replace their theory. I don't know, man. Like I think it is a torus field interaction. I think that the toroid and the hyperboloid go in and out, which is that's how they operate. And then of course, coincidentally, the tides go in and out. So I would say
Is
it's
it
within this torus field. It's like a giant cycle. It's like a giant energy system.
so? Do you also like? I don't know if any of the things that you said are true, but I'll just go ahead and grant it to you that I don't. I'm not familiar with any of those debunks. They might all be total BS, but I don't know. But
I'm pretty veterans, bro.
yeah, I'm inclined to just actually just like give you that. Like maybe there's some anomalies and some fluid dynamic problems with the tides that require better explanation. How do you
Tidal nodes, yeah.
explain that the tides? Is it also coincidence that they're directly linked to the movement of the moon? Like as a surfer, I
Mhm.
know when I'm going to find the waves, and I do that by checking the moon calendar. So
Yeah,
why
yeah.
is that?
That's a good question. So of course, they're actually they don't. It's not like they move right with the moon or something. They actually lag behind the moon, but they are in a cycle that is very closely related to the moon for sure.
Right.
Um, yeah, and so the way I look at that is not like the moon is physically pulling the water or anything. To me, that's insane. Because right when the moon's over you, it should pull the water more, right? Or like, why would it pull it on the other side away from the moon at the same time in the opposite direction? All stuff. What I think is we live in a gigantic cyclical system, and it's this toroid. So the lights reset, the planets reset, the moon and the sun have their system, and it's actually like day and night, and they balance each other out. It's like the yin yang. That's what it's about. And so as the moon moves in this cycle, so do the tides have a cycle, and it's all within this torus field that move. So they have a correlation because it's all within the cycle of the torus field, right? As opposed to like the moon physically grabbing the water or something. Now, some flat earthers claim there's an electrodynamic relationship between the moon and the salt water, and that's why you get it in the oceans and not in the other body's water, which is it's better than the globe's answer, honestly, because they don't address it. But yeah, like I don't, I just, I that's what I think. It's a giant, beautiful. The creator made the most beautiful, amazing timepiece, and it'll blow your mind. Even if the Earth's a globe, it still had to be created, of course. Like their model's insane, needs a creator. But yeah, I just think it's a beautiful, like very intricate timepiece, and it moves in a cycle and breathes in and out of this torus
Vaga
field.
sent $3 neener
And
neener.
the tides and the moon move within that cycle. So it's just like an amazing, totally not coincidental place that we live. And they kind of hijacked it where, like I said, they said the sun and the moon are drastically different sizes. And that the moon actually got here because a Mars-sized body hit the Earth and broke it into pieces, and one rock stuck around, and then gravity turned it into a ball, and it just happened to stop at the perfect distance to make it have total eclipses, all this crazy stuff. Where in reality, no, the creator made it, and it's like incredible and balanced and perfect, and it's a cycle. We're supposed to use the sky as like a calendar and a clock. So that's how I look at it. That was a long answer, but yeah, I think that that's the answer because you have the discrepancy between salt water and fresh water. I would stick with the two plain Earth positions over the globe. The globe doesn't really work.
So there's a electromagnetic wave that's pushing. Is it pushing the water to the south and then back to the north, like out and then back in? Like you said, it's breathing. Is that the way the tides work? Do they go south
Yeah,
and
they
then
like
north?
breathe in and out. It's very crazy. Yeah, but just to clarify,
But don't they go east west? Because that's how the tides move.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll show you this. Yeah, they go in and out as well, and then everything moves east to west. I'll show you a picture on a flat Earth, but just to clarify, personally, I don't lean towards the moon's electromagnetic and pulling or having physical interaction with the water. That's just another flat Earth position because electromagnetism interacts with salt water much more, and whatever, right? It's possible. They're trying to absorb that it does have a relationship with the moon because of what you said, right? Which is that you can like look at the moon and know where the tides are. I think it's actually just a giant system that is in a cycle at all times, and the tide is just part of the cyclical nature as well. But either one I think is better. But I will show you something called bobwinds.com, and it shows you the wind patterns and the magnetic flux on a flat Earth and a globe. And you'll see why everything goes on either model. You'll see why it goes on. Let me pull it up on like east to west. But this right here also like really blew my mind. I will just say, man, you can see that every conversation is kind of like it's like nuanced and like tons of info. And this is why people really just kind of don't want to deal with it. Here's the wind on a flat Earth. If we go down to 10 hectopascals here, so you'll see it moves around on the outside, right? And then you have it moving on the inside. Then you have it on the globe right here. You see, it's just kind of it's honestly just kind of all over the place on the globe. Yeah, it's much
We're doing
more
wind instead of this is wind, not tides.
Vaga
Right?
sent $3.
Oh yeah, this is wind.
Bega.
This is the oceans right here. So here it is on the globe. So you do see the middle right. You see the line right through the middle for the most part. It messes up some here. But every time you look at the south is where they definitely lied. In my opinion, like the south, they lied about the south. Only 10% of the world's population is in the south. So you're always going to see mistakes there. Oh, what a coincidence. I guess there's nothing going on in the water near Antarctica. Yeah, but anyway, so that's it on the, let's see what it looks like on the flat Earth. You see it's in a perfect east to west in a circle around the center.
Right.
So that's why.
So on the globe, the assumption is that's because the Earth is spinning.
Mm-hmm.
And
on the flat Earth,
it's passing by and the moon's effect is being inflicted upon the waters.
Yeah, and that it's tidally locked, and if it was going 1/4 a mile per hour faster or slower, we'd see the rest of the moon and all this. Here's just to show you this while I have it pulled up. This is the magnetic flux on a flat Earth. This is going to have a lot to do with your model claims it's because the Earth is spinning, but actually we have magnetic flux over top of the Earth within the toroid. Wait, let me show you.
Oh, it's magnetic flux.
And that's part of it. Yeah, because the toroid moves.
Vaga sent $3
like I said,
on
magnetism's
glow.
not even well understood by mainstream.
Isn't it going the opposite
It's also because
direction?
we get free energy that way. What'd you say?
Is that the direction that the tide goes?
This is the magnetic flux. Oh yeah, yeah, east to west. They claim all this is because the Earth is spinning,
But that's going west to east.
uh, yeah. So then, like, okay, so if this is moving west to east, it's because the Earth is spinning,
Mm-hmm.
right? So same thing, yeah.
But
It's relative to the Earth's spin.
okay, so that magnetic flux is going west to east, but we get a sunrise that inset that goes east to west, and I think the tide goes that way too. Right?
Yeah, right. So in both situations, it's the same. It's like it's reacting to the motion, right? Like it's the globe claims it's because of the spin, right? It's because of the spin and the tidal lock nature of the moon. Personally,
I'm just
it
saying it
makes
looks
more
like the
sense.
energy flows going one way and the tide goes the opposite direction.
Right, because say if you're spinning a ball, right, then you're gonna have the stuff move relative to that spin the other way, right? Or like in the stationary Earth, of course, there is just a movement over top of the Earth, and that's connected to the stars, and it all moves, which is, well, sorry, which just
I'm just
makes
saying
more
if
sense.
it's the electromagnetic field, I would expect the tide to be going in the direction of the movement of the magnetivity. But that's an interesting theory. I mean, I obviously
Well, yeah.
I'm
If you
still
see, if
tapped
you
in on the
see
gravity. I still think it's the moon.
the top
On
right, that's a
mhm.
magnetic field. So yeah, I mean, what a coincidence that the
Like a
Earth's
top down
magnetic
view.
field looks just like that in the top right. It's probably a coincidence, but yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean,
So
gravity is a
so
big part of it if we want to get into that. But I mean, I know it's a long conversation. I know all about it.
yeah. So what's
Globe
your
doesn't
theory? Like,
know.
why do things go down? I don't think we got to that. Why do things go
Yeah,
always down and they don't go toward the North Pole? They just go
yeah.
down toward the dirt, and they
Mhm.
accelerate at a constant speed regardless of the atmosphere. I mean, like in a vacuum, things are moving. They're always accelerating down in a constant way.
Yeah.
Like, what causes that acceleration? What do you explain that with?
Yeah, so technically it doesn't actually move constant, right? Like we use 9.8 meters per second squared as a constant for mathematical purposes. It's pretty close to that though, right? But it's an agreed upon average and it's treated like a constant. It actually slightly fluctuates based on like where you are on the earth and many other things. But so anyway, for me, everything is electrostatic, like everything that exists. There's literally not one piece of matter you can name that's not electrostatic. So like wood, rubber, glass, everything is electrostatic. And I can cite Purdue University, right? All molecular and intermolecular attractive forces are electrostatic in nature, meaning what holds all matter together is electrostatic. So everything's electrostatic. On the smallest
What
scale,
does
electrostatics.
electrostatic mean? What do you mean?
Well, that's an interesting question because I don't believe in what they claim that it is, but basically it's like not moving charge, right? So it's static, meaning not moving. So it's like it's just an intrinsic charge that everything has, like a vibrational resonance that manifests as charge. Now, what the mainstream particle physics hate to deny the ether paradigm claims is that it's the exchange of virtual photons and all this crazy virtual photons and I don't know, but it's just the intrinsic everything vibrates, everything's connected via vibration, which is an ancient principle known for a long time. And anyway, so everything's like electric. Everything's interconnected literally physically, and it's electric. So like electrostatics is if I rub my feet on the carpet and shock you, right? Like that's me, that's an electrostatic shock. If you rub a balloon on your head and the hair sticks up, that's electrostatics. If I put the balloon on the wall and it sticks, that's because of electrostatics.
Mm-hmm.
I can make two styrofoam plates levitate because they're electrostatic, right? So anyway, everything that exists has that base charge, like everything. Even things that are quote unquote neutral have a net charge that held them together. Everything's electric. The reason that's important is because uh, that's literally all things that exist. And on the smallest scale, it's 10 to the 39th power stronger than gravity is even claimed to be. That's 39 zeros, dude. It's not even close. Like on the smallest scale. Now they say gravity's scalar, right? So like when you get all the way out to space and on the planetary scale, gravity's going to be the strong one. It overtakes everything. Blah blah blah.
Yep.
So yeah, but it's 10 to the 39th power stronger. So like I'm looking at reality. I'm like, okay, well, we know that electrostatics can like cause things to go up and down because I can make things levitate with electrostatics. I can pull things towards me. So, like, that's obviously a variable we have to account for. Long story short, the Earth has a downward electric flow on the Earth. You can measure it. It's super weak. Well, you can actually run a motor off of it. So you could take a motor and then tie a string to it, have a balloon or a drone or whatever. And the higher you go up in the atmos, the more electricity you'll get, the more that motor will turn because there's just naturally electricity in the air. Now, Tesla tried to tell us a long time ago, but for obvious reasons, we don't know about it, right? But anyway, so there's a down. You can look it up. Mainstream will admit it. There's a downward electric flow, and there's like 100-volt-meter equipotential increase in the atmosphere. Richard Feynman has a good lecture series on it. But all that being said, so the energy is going down, seeking equilibrium. The electricity is going down, seeking equilibrium at the surface. Okay, so then every object, which all things are electrostatic, if they're within that downward electric pressure, right, they're going to seek equilibrium and go down relative to that slight bias. Now, not everything goes down, right? Like sometimes things go up, and that's because of course, the density buoyancy relationship, and the buoyant force would be stronger than that really weak bias. You see what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
then you ask, well, what is buoyancy? And that's because of the electric relationship. Everything's actually electric. And yeah, they lied about that to me for obvious reasons. Like we have utility
so
bills. So,
it seems though, if that's the hypothesis,
mhm.
it should be fairly easy for some electrical engineer to create a device that can sample and monitor and read and examine that electrical energy that you're talking about. The
Yeah, you can.
electrostatic thing, that thing that's going down. So what's that device called, or where's that test?
You can use yeah, it's been measured many times. You can use like voltmeters. You can use like electrostatic field meters at different heights. You can use I have a whole list of them. Like you can use weather balloons. Like you can use tethered weather balloons. There's all kinds of things. You can use what's called a corona motor. That if you wanted the actual measurements, you'd use the first ones I'm saying. You use like a voltmeter at different elevations and stuff like that. But you can use a corona motor, and it's electrostatic motor, and it'll start to generate electricity by pulling it from the air with just a string on it. It's pulling it from the air. But yeah, it's been measured many times. This is actually not denied, even by like I would say, I guess your side. So it is measurable. And then I don't know. There's all kinds of parts of that. People get really triggered when I bring this up, but because there's really no rebuttal. Because in science, what you do is you see an effect, and you want to prove the cause of the effect. So you come up with a hypothesis. You're like, I think this causes that. So it's like, oh, things fall down. Like, what causes that? Be like, okay, gravity says that the bending and warping of space and time causes things to fall down into a gravity well and go to the ground, right? Okay, that's a cool story. And you can't actually science that. You can't like physically bend and warp space and time or nothing like that, right? That's never been experimentally validated. But I'm saying that the electrostatics in relationship to the electrostatics of the medium cause things to go up or down. So my hypothesis is that if you manipulate electrostatics, you can make things go up or down. Well,
Yeah, so that's the
you
thing
can
that
do
you
that.
would need to do. Like you're saying,
Yeah.
so you're saying that you have electrostatic machines that can essentially
Mhm.
work as anti-gravity or make
Yeah,
things
bro.
heavier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where's
So
that?
it's called
Where's that?
yeah, it's called a Van de Graaff generator. I have one. It's in the closet over there actually, but it's called a Van de Graaff generator. So if you like spin the wheel, it has a little belt on it. It'll build up electrostatic charge. So you can put like a little styrofoam or wood or iron, any material. And once you start to turn the wheel, it'll make it float. It'll make it levitate. And actually, like I think it's MIT has just now designed an electrostatic drone that just runs off electrostatics and it levitates, like no propeller or anything. It just levitates with electrostatics. Bumblebees do this as well. But yeah, you can do it with a test yourself. You can make things float. Just like you can take two styrofoam plates and you can make it charged up and you can make it levitate above the other plate. And you can actually manipulate it and change the weight of an object, and you can make the objects go down faster. So for me, when I figured that out, I'm like, well, that's doing what gravity's claiming to be the answer for, but it's 10 to the 39th power stronger on the smallest scale, and you can never get rid of it. You can never get rid of that. So like, how could you prove gravity? So basically, people are like, oh yeah, what's it? Then why don't you make like flying machines then? You know, I'm like, Well, it would take a tons of electricity. By the way, the government does have like flying machines, right? I mean, the UFOs are
Hmm.
not new. The Nazis had them in the 30s, right? And they use electrogravitic propulsion.
Yeah,
So
that
you're
Bob
not going to use,
Lazar guy was explaining
yeah,
essentially something that maybe was that kind of machine.
yeah,
Yeah, I really actually do think that there is a way to use vibration and yeah, electro charge to overcome gravity. I think you probably can zip through space using it that way. It kind of makes sense.
mhm,
Just the same way that light and sound, they move vibratorily. I think there's a way to actually do that with matter too. It just kind of like intuitively makes sense to me.
yeah.
Um,
The question is it just overtaking gravity, or is it what we call gravity, right? As
right,
someone
that's
said,
what I'm thinking.
the static
That's what I think.
electricity work in a vacuum? And the answer
Right.
to that is yes. Also, yes, it does.
But
Like,
the question I was going to ask is actually sort of related to that. Is there something
mhm.
like a Faraday cage or like a giant iron box? Is there some way that you can block the electromagnetic field that's causing things to go down, where you enter into it and then you just like don't experience what we call gravity anymore?
Yeah. So no, I mean a Faraday cage does like drastically decrease like electricity, right? But it doesn't. There's no such thing as attaining zero. And even in a vacuum chamber, there's known to be like what's called like an electric and magnetic constant. It's called the free impedance of free space. This is one of those things that shows the ether is obviously real and they can't accept it, right? Even in a vacuum, you have electric and magnetic constants of energy. You have
Yeah.
impedance in free space when there's like no particles there, basically none. So it shouldn't be there anyway. So that field is always there. And if we wanted to get technical, logically speaking, if there's an ether, it would have something to do with it as well. But yeah, Faraday cage won't eliminate it. It will drastically decrease it, but it doesn't matter, right? Because even if there's just a little tiny bit, it's 10 to the 39th power stronger than gravity. It's just this little weak bias that sets the down. Tesla said that the ether actually basically compresses and presses down on all the material. And I tend to agree, but I don't lead with that because I can't go physically test the ether. Right? I can't prove it, so I'm not going to bring it up in a debate. But I do think that the ether plays a role. But yeah, even in a Faraday cage, it's still there. But this is what it's funny, right? Like if someone was being scientific, they'd be like, "Oh wow, so you can prove your claim, right? You can make things go up and down and change their weight and make them fall faster with electrostat." And when you put it in a gravimeter, I don't know if you know what that is, but a gravimeter is like a vacuum chamber, and we drop a little BB inside this little bitty vacuum chamber, and we drop a BB, and we use interferometry lasers to measure it to get 9.8 meters per second squared, right, or really close to it, and we measure the gravity on the Earth that way. Well, when you do that at the same place over and over, universities have shown that during a thunderstorm, it falls at different rates.
Hmm.
During lightning storms, falls at different rates. During wind, it falls at different rates, but it's in a vacuum. It's not like being hit by the wind, right? During rainfall, it falls at different rates. Well, these are all electrostatic phenomena, right? That's what lightning is. Lightning is electrostatic discharge. So anyway, all I'm trying to say, long way of saying, is like you can demonstrate what I'm saying. You can actually do an experiment. That's science, right? So then I'm like, okay, so if I'm going to consider gravity, can someone show me an experiment where we like actually manipulate bending and warping of space time? Like, can we actually manipulate space time and make that happen, or do I just have to believe it happens? And so, to be fair, mine's like significantly better than gravity. I think that flat Earth was infiltrated, and they called it flat Earth. They said just say density, just say buoyancy. They have people running around, and some people just are ignorant. But like you said, they run around like showing the stupid debunks of the moon, and it makes us look really bad. It makes flat Earth look bad. But and it makes you think, oh well, these flat earthers are just a bunch of stupid people that don't understand basic concepts and can't
Yeah.
can't like look into it. Yeah, but I know I just said a lot, so whatever you got to say about.
No, that's an interesting perspective, and you do have a valid point there that I don't like. You might be saying, and I haven't done any of these myself, so but I'll take you at your word that there are these things like when it rains and there's thunder and there's electromagnetic disturbance. It seems that things act differently with regard to the normal operation of what we call gravity. They accelerate differently or they weigh differently or something like that. That's interesting. I haven't come across that myself.
Yeah.
But I don't know of any circumstance on the planet where these things that we consider to be constants of gravity can be manipulated. I don't think we don't have an anti-gravity machine. We don't have a technology that can warp gravity or pause it or increase it. So it's a force that we believe in that's related to, as far as we know, mass. They say that's related to mass. So I guess the excuse would be, well, we don't have a thing that can increase mass. We don't have like we don't have a matter generator there, and that would be essentially the same as a gravity increaser. And we don't have we aren't on that level of technology where we're not working with matter at the level of its essence, which is really well, whatever that is. It's still sort of mysterious to us. We're talking about something that's essentially still a mystery down to the level of what we call quantum. The
it's
realm
terrible
where
there, right?
yeah, and now then it gets all fuzzy there. So I mean, I got to hand that to you. But this is, again, to me, the problem is this is us examining the document of your parents' adoption and being like, this doesn't add up. And I'm like, okay, maybe not. But then what do we replace it with? And I don't know, maybe, but I have to. I don't know. I don't
More
know.
like your mom told you a fake story about when they took you from the hospital when you were born, and then I come show you the adoption paper, and I'm like, look, man, that story your mom told you is not real, bro. I know you believe it. I know that
Yeah.
everyone in your hometown believes it. I know that you think, but then we start talking about it, you're like, to be fair, I never saw a video. I don't remember it. I don't know, that's what,
Yeah.
like, we just came to the realization gravity's not proven. The truth of the matter is that quantum debunked gravity. General relativity doesn't work at all. Special relativity only partially works. Quantum debunked it. They made up the idea of a graviton, like it's going to come. You're never going to find a graviton. Gravity doesn't exist. Now, an ether, with everything being electric and vibrational, works perfectly. It solves all of quantum's paradoxes overnight. So you must wonder, why don't they use that? Same thing with the cosmological scale. Relativity didn't work there either. That's what gravity is, of course. And it's
Wait.
all,
I just realized I thought of something that didn't get answered in my question. That you said so much, and that's fine. And I think that's great. It's not like you were filibustering or something. But why does everything fall straight down at the ground and not along the path of what would be expected in this toroidal energy field that we're in? Why does all the the electromagnetic, the electrostatic thing that we're experiencing, why do we accelerate straight down at the ground from any place that we've ever discovered? Why isn't it toward the North Pole, or why don't we fall in a curve if we're in a toroidal energy system?
yeah. So it's called equipotential fields of electricity. So, like, equipotential simply just meaning like equal amounts of potential, right? And so it goes up from the earth in an equal proportion. And anyway, long story short, if you have electrical potential increasing, what happens is it sets like a gradient, and then it'll set a downward bias straight down to the other surface. So that's what we have on the earth. They're called a Gaussian surface, which just means like a surface that can like conduct or transfer electricity, right? So we have one on the grounds, and then we have this like equipotential increase. Now, the only way to have that is actually to have two surfaces. Like, that's the only way experiment can demonstrate it, which would go to show there's like something above us acting as the second Gaussian surface. But either way, what I'm saying is when you have that equipotential increase, the positive, quote unquote, is going to move down and seek equilibrium towards the negative. So this electricity is just seeking equilibrium straight down relative to the electric gradient. That's why it's straight up and down. So yeah, that's my answer. It's like it sets a direct down vector to the surface of the earth, which is of course objectively down on a plane, right? As opposed to on the globe, it's relative to the center of mass and blah blah blah. So it just goes down toward, it's just seeking equilibrium to the ground, which is why it's called the ground. That's how we ground things that are electrically charged. It's going down to seek equilibrium at the ground. All things are vibrational, and all things are seeking equilibrium. So I hope that makes sense.
I gotta admit, I didn't understand what you just said.
If
But
you have
it
a
makes
bunch more
me
charge
like,
up here, it's going to go to the ground to seek.
okay,
to
but if I'm
ground
on the
out.
side of a mountain, how come I don't fall toward the mountain? I still fall down toward the valley, which is further away.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question for gravity, who claims it's just mass alone that pulls you and stuff. I guess you would say the Earth's mass, blah blah blah. But even you're on the side of the
Yeah, it's the
mountain, you're still-
supermassive core that's
Yeah.
creating the
I
gravity.
get it. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
But
not the dirt on the surface.
well, some claim actually that you can do an experiment that the mountain will pull a ball towards it. As stupid as that is, that's like one of the big experiments for gravity in history. But I'm saying if you're on the side of a
Well,
mountain,
actually, I believe that to a certain degree there is that effect. In fact, didn't they like put those two plates together and found that they like have a slight bit of attraction just due to their heavy mass? I don't remember the name of that. There's two big
well, I know
iron
there's some.
plates, and they put them together and found this small bit of attraction that was created just from
I
their
don't
own
know. I
mass.
mean, it sounds kind of like the Casimir effect, which is about like the background energy and ether. I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but um, even if you're on the side of the mountain, it's just, dude, we live on an overall plane, and then so you just keep drawing horizontal lines above that. That's the equipotential increase of electricity. Meaning there's 100 volts per meter. It goes up 100 volts per meter on the Earth. And Richard Feynman and all this stuff will tell you this is like mainstream accepted. So anyway, that electricity is going to go down. The quickest route is straight down to the ground to equal out. Like basically, the ground absorbs electrical charge to equal out. That's why we like when I used to work at an airport, I had to ground the plane so I could put gas in it.
Yeah, I understand
Right?
that, but the thing is, like, even we watch it like a lightning bolt, it doesn't always go straight down. It seeks like whatever's like the path of least resistance is the way that electricity goes. And if you're telling me that we're in a toroidal energy field, it sounds like the shape would be round. And then if you're talking about going to the down to the ground, as in like the closest would be like if you're on a mountain, if you jump off the cliff, you would be drawn to the side of the cliff, like it would ground right there. Why does it ground toward what we consider on a globe to be the center? It's always the center of the earth. Why is it always this thing that we're calling down? How do we get down? Well, you're saying it's down in relation to the plane, but the plane that you said we live on is established in relation to the toroid. And the toroid, so you're talking about a perpendicular plate in relation to this like the core of the apple. So why at the edge out here is it still down in relation to the plate when the toroidal energy field is curved all over the place like a globe?
Yeah, like this right here. So like we
Yeah.
live on the plane, and everything goes down because there's electricity that's actually probably generated by the torus field within the etheric background, but it's all just horizontally going up and it goes down. This torus field it has in my opinion, it has a very slow, slight drift over top of the earth, and it's in the ether, right? So it's like that's not going to affect objects, but maybe slightly, which is why we see things way different at different places on the earth. This is why this is actually a potential explanation for the pendulum, although the pendulum is kind of shoddy and really like a kind of like a trick, but either way it would explain that. So there's a slight drift and it's way up above us, bro, right? Like but what we see go up and down is just if you just draw horizontal lines all the way across the earth and keep stacking them, everything is a level of horizontal lines. And
Hmm.
the globe actually says that we have these equipotential lines. Of course, they just bend them, right? But and so everything just goes down. Like if I have two Gaussian plates, I could do it in my room, right? I could have two Gaussian plates. I could introduce current, and what's going to happen is there's going to be like an equipotential increase and things are going to go down. That's what you do with actually what you do with the Van de Graaff generator is when you when you stir the wheel, it flips the field, right? And then things go up, right? So you can demonstrate it with the Van de Graaff generator. Like when you turn it, the reason the thing goes up is you flip it's like polarizing it. It's flipping the polarity of the field and it makes it go up. And then once it resides or goes back to flipping the polarity of the field back, then it'll go back down, right? So you can make things go straight up or
Okay, I'm
straight
starting to
down.
understand what your answer is. I'm starting to understand
Yeah.
that. So if I were to imagine there's like you're saying, this equipotential force fields or whatever you want to call them, that's not it, but like a stack of pancakes all the way up, and the
Mhm.
energy flows perpendicular to the stacks of pancakes, so that's always going to be down, regardless of your place on the plate.
Yeah.
These potential lines, it's always going to be perpendicular to that, never deviating. It's always going to be from one plate to another, so that's going to always go down because the plates are
Yeah.
flat in relation to the plane in the middle of the toroid. Wow, this is far out, man. This is a far out theory.
Yeah, that's crazy,
That's
man.
wild.
I think this is why it's censored, right? I mean, obviously I have a bias, but well, yeah,
What
because you
how
can test that. It's
do,
pretty cool. You can make things go up and down.
what do you think of satellites? What's your thought on that?
That's a good question. Um, I don't deny that quote unquote satellites exist per se. I don't believe that they are what they claim they are, where they're like, you know, 10,000 miles away or anything. But
What about the
I think that
International
they can.
Space Station? Is it up there flying around in the sky?
ISS is very interesting, man. you can definitely see a lunar and solar transit. So like you can see what looks like the ISS when it goes in front of the sun. So I think there's
Right.
definitely something up there. Yeah. It's like I don't believe it is what they say. I don't believe people are in it. I
Mm.
like if John Wick kidnapped me and put a gun to my head and said I had 10 seconds to get the answer right or I'd die and asked me if there were people in the ISS, I would like very quickly say no, bro. Like they're like I've seen way too much. They fake that, but anyway, there is something up there. I don't know what it is, but I do know that they use satelloons for a lot of things. For like it's like really cost efficient. They put satelloons up there, and they have a satellite, what looks like a satellite, connected to the balloon. It goes way up there. It costs way less money. NASA admitted it long ago. Spends billions on it. When we had to give internet to someone in Africa, we used the Google Loon project, used balloons, not satellites. So that's what I think a lot of it is. And I also do think we have what's called like quote unquote satellites. I think they move within this field, right? So if you see this, I think they move within those lines. I think they ride the field. And if you look at the ISS mapped out on a flat plane, you see the flower of life, which is no coincidence to me. But I think they ride the. So I think there is something up there. They're not as far as they say they are, and they're not nearly as like frequently used and prominent as they claim they are. I don't deny them. I will say if you look up pictures of you look up pictures of satellites and go to images, you'll see nothing but cartoons. So I mean, I think it's definitely blown out of proportion, but that's a long way. The ISS is interesting. I don't know exactly what that is. I don't lie, right? I mean, like I don't know. I have no idea what it is. But there are some satellites that it's 99% of transmissions that we use are through undersea cables in 2022. 99%. So people have this misnomer that your GPS is using a satellite or something, but it's not. It's not, you know.
It's not.
No, it uses undersea cables and transmissions from ground towers. 99% of transmissions, which is
Now
crazy
wait a
because that's
minute.
pretty much.
Now wait a minute. Now I was born in the '80s, so I'm like a '90s kid. And back in the '90s, I got into off-road jeeping and mountain bikes and exploration, hiking, and all sorts of stuff. And so before there were cell phone towers everywhere. Before
Mhm.
Nokia phones were Nokia phones, like the little black and white beep beep boop phones, way before smartphones.
Merlin sent
My dad had an
$5 when they see
actual
astronauts
satellite phone
playing in
in his
zero
car,
gravity.
and it
Is
worked
that
almost
special
everywhere.
effects?
And there were no cell
Looks real.
towers; they didn't build those towers yet. And I also had a Garmin GPS device that I used for off-roading, and it worked where there like I had a pager at one time. My pager didn't beep out there. There's no way a cell phone was going to work, but I could get absolute pinpoint accurate GPS location. And the assumption is it's because it's triangulating between that satellite, and that satellite, and it's pinging,
Mhm.
and it can judge the distances and triangulate my location and find where I'm at. It
Yep.
didn't require anything other than access to the Garmin service and activation on my device, but there were no cell towers on the planet. There was no cables. So
Mm.
what was
There was
that
the
Garmin
Loran
device
system.
running off of?
The Loran system was built before World War II, bro. The Loran system does the same thing as GPS. Um,
What's that?
use case. Yeah, they're actually funny enough, they're actually spending millions of dollars now in like 8 different first world countries to rebuild Loran systems. LORAN. But so yeah, I'm not saying, but just to clarify, bro, I don't like to make exclusive claims. I don't feel the need to. I don't know that they don't send any signals from what people call a satellite. I know for a fact that it's blown out of proportion, and that when you look at the actual companies, I've even contacted some of them. 99% of transmissions are through towers and undersea cables. If you like, most people don't notice that, but there is a huge amount of cables running from like continent to continent in the north.
Yeah,
Seriously, not
how
in
does
the
that have
south.
anything to do with satellites?
Well, I'm just
I
saying
don't get
that
it.
people think that our satellites give it like people think that basically their satellite TV comes from a satellite. It doesn't. It doesn't. It comes from towers. And people think I'm just explaining that
Okay,
what
well,
people have
wait
a
a minute. Let me ask you
misnomer.
about that because I have a satellite TV and I live in
Mhm,
California. I mean, everybody
mhm.
knows that already. Who knows me? My satellite dish points to the west, which means it's pointing out over the ocean, and it points up into the sky out over the ocean, and there ain't no tower out there, dog. So what's it pointing at?
Yeah. So they have towers out in the water. So I'm not saying that it doesn't use satellite, but I'm saying that if you go to their own satellite TV's own websites, they tell you that majority of their transmissions are through towers. So I don't know specifically. I guess you are right on the ocean. That's interesting. I know they have some towers out in the water, like in like buoys in the water, but I don't know. Like I said, NASA says they use satelloons that's how we get all of our weather data. That's how we get all of our weather data in the world. They put up 1,000 balloons in synchronization every like day or so or something like that. They get all kinds of weather data. They can stay up there for many, many months at a time. So I don't deny that maybe you get a signal out there. It seems less likely to me if they have a high demand, but it doesn't really, yeah, who knows? I mean, there's stuff in the sky. And like I said, I think that electrogravitic propulsion and UFOs are easily attainable, as are like satellites that could self-propel, that could ride the field, the Taurus. Satellites, I don't feel the need to go down swinging against them. I just know that a lot of people think they know way more about satellites than is true. Like, I mean, just go look up picture of satellite and you're going to get in space, real picture of satellite in space. You get nothing but cartoons. We've seen them crash out of the sky attached to balloons, and they use majority of transmissions use undersea cables and towers. So like all that is just like objective, and I don't know. Is there stuff I don't know? Sure, I don't know all the answers about the satellites. I just don't believe their stories.
So you're saying the concept of a satellite, you reject that outright?
The way they say that they operate, that they
like orbit. We're talking
around,
about orbit.
yeah, like as in free falling in space. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I think something could orbit over top of the flat Earth. That's technically still in orbit, like magnetic levitation, quantum locking. I think they could ride the field. And I think also if there's a container, you could use quantum locking upside down, which would be perpetual. And if there's any type of superfluid medium at all anywhere up there, you'd have perpetual motion. You never have to worry about it. Like, if you stir superfluid, it goes forever. And it looks like this guy has superfluid in space. So I don't know. I don't.
So there might be a way of parking vehicles up there. Like there might be a space station up there, but it's not in orbit velocity being achieved by a rocket. It's actually parked in an electrostatic lock of some type.
Yeah, or it could even technically be moving, right? Because most of them are geostationary, meaning like they claim they move perfectly with the Earth. Most satellites are geostationary, so it's like, or just sitting above the Earth. That's not moving. But yeah, I think you could lock yourself in with electrogravitic propulsion and magnetic levitation and all kinds of stuff. And I can physically verify that. I just don't believe in vacuums of space and thousands of miles and cartoons. That's not my thing.
At this point, I feel like we've had like a great discussion. It's been nice talking to you and everything's been cool, but I want to ask, I mean, we can keep going on, but I don't know, we might just go on and then just get exhausted. But I also have a friend who's a fellow streamer here on Cozy, and he's wanting to know if he can speak as well, and I could just pipe his audio in through Discord.
Yeah, I guess so. That? As long as we don't keep it too much longer, though, we're about to hit 3 hours. And
True.
Oh, I'm cool with them talking for a little bit. It's 2:00 here, so.
All right, let me set it up. I'm gonna jump back in this VC that they're in. I'm gonna go Here we are. I'm gonna go in. Just stand by 1 second. I'm gonna go in the private VC. Where is it?
They say now Austin's turn to interrogate the baller. Nah, he's being chill, man.
HW, you here? Can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up?
All right, let's go. Let me see if I can patch you through into this call. Did you want to call in? Somebody was saying let HW speak.
I mean, they were saying that I'd be willing to talk with Wits, I believe his name is.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I think let's try it. Is the audio going to work? You should be able to hear each other now, I believe.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I hear myself
echo.
twice.
Oh, it's gonna create an echo. Rough. How could I do it then? If I'd have to change. Yeah, all right. Let me make a quick change real quick so that it works. I'm gonna change audio input. Would that work? Actually, you're on Discord. Yeah. Would you mind just hopping in my server if I post a link on your YouTube, and then we could just be in the same server, in the same VC?
I would run it through StreamYard though. I don't actually know.
Gotcha. I could. Oh yeah, I could put the audio on my end, but it wouldn't work on your end.
Maybe just the ether's blocking it, bro. I mean, yeah, maybe. I mean, I'd be down to like do another conversation at some point. Like I said, you seem
Hey, what
pretty
if I
chill
just
to me, so
what if I just give him the StreamYard link?
you can do that.
Yeah, Harris, you want to jump in with us? Let me see.
How does that work? I've never used that before.
It's basically just like a Google Meet or a Skype call, or it just works through. Do you have Google Chrome? Probably works best with that. I'm just gonna give you a link. You're gonna click it, and then just like activate your camera or not. But let me see. Message. Okay, I DM'd the link to you. I think that should do it.
Let me try and grab this. Copy link.
Yeah, throw that in the Chrome window. You should be able to join the call with us. HW here, Harris Walker, he was in the call with me. We were talking to the other flat earthers in my chat together, and he actually, full disclosure, he's telling me he used to work for NASA, so he's a NASA shill. And yep. And so yeah, and he watched the whole thing when we found you, and we were pinging your chat, so he was here with us through the beginning and all of this. So I think probably fun to let H-Dub come in.
Sure. He wouldn't be the first NASA employee that I've debated.
These darn NASA shill globetards. These
I've
ball
had
heads.
some NASA people be pretty honest. and
Big
admit that
Tech.
a lot of it could be fake.
I joined, but I don't think you guys hear me unless I
mean, I have NASA
mute
themselves
Discord.
saying that it could be fake.
You joined. Did it say that you're in the show? Do you have to let him in?
Oh, there he is.
What? There we go.
What's up, man?
Hey, sorry, I don't have a camera. I'm not a person that shows camera. I'm like an anonymous guy, but I think I hear everyone just fine.
Cool.
And full disclosure, I did not work for NASA. I said I've done some things at NASA. Which is
no, you said you work for NASA and you're a federal agent.
That is true. Yeah, that part is true.
Oh, I've done some things at NASA too, bro. What you got?
I had some questions because I saw some inconsistencies that I was like, I don't know how you square them away. You said that there's a possibility that Earth, whatever shape you want to consider it to be, is like stationary, the center, whatever, relative to the aether, it's not moving, but that it could be spinning. You said that, right?
What, the Earth?
Yeah.
No, dude, the Earth doesn't spin.
No.
So the ether is drifting, seemingly drifting over top of a stationary ether within a toroid.
If that were the case, then when the Michelson-Morley test was done, wouldn't you see different results from what we got if there is motion within the ether?
No. We actually did see a fringe shift in Michelson-Morley. It was just very small, and then we did Michelson-Gale-Pearson, and we got using interferometry, Michelson-Gale-Pearson, and they detected the sidereal rotation perfectly with a 98% accuracy. And of course, it matches the vortex of the ether, blah, 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 using the Sagnac effect. So, no, Michelson-Morley shows us exactly what we would see if the Earth is stationary and there's a slight drift inside the ether.
The problem with that is you admitted that at some point that gravity, whatever, the acceleration towards the Earth changes dependent on latitude. And the explanation for that is that the Earth is rotating, and that acceleration in rotation is calculated by v squared over r. And when you diminish r by standing at the poles to 0, there is no acceleration outwards. So at the poles and at the equator, you have varying weights because of that.
Allegedly, Yeah, there's actually gravitational anomalies. So you claim that the gravity changes relative to where you are, which would actually be the centrifugal force, right? Because you're spinning, and that's what changed the weight. It would actually be the spin of the Earth. But there are gravitational anomalies and weight distribution anomalies. We have people that have gone out and stay on the same latitude and changed position and got different weights. And I'm just saying that if that anomaly, if that claim was true, which I don't actually think it is, even if it was consistently true, um, it could be explained with a torus moving and with the sky translating the centrifugal motion and force to the stationary Earth. And even Einstein would agree, actually, said in a letter to Ernst Mach that if the sky was moving, it would translate the Coriolis and centrifugal effect down to a stationary Earth. So that's all I was saying. I don't have to believe in it. There are gravitational anomalies that actually go right against the globe predictions.
I think a fairly simple explanation for that is that because the Earth has hot magma on the inside and it's rotating, that the center of gravity and the elements within the Earth are constantly moving, so that the center of gravity is not entirely precise. And this also affects with tides because when we're doing the calculations for the center of gravity, when you're moving the tides, you're suddenly moving this calculation as well. So the varying uh, weight, gravity, acceleration towards Earth, these anomalies can be explained by a normal phenomenon, but the principle of it being there's a like linear progression depending on whether you're on a pole or on the equator. How would you explain that with your model?
I just First of all, there is no going to the polls, right? So, like, you can make claims about the polls, but that's not reality, right? And you can say, "Oh, it would do this on the globe," but that's not reality. Just like you just claimed that the Earth's core is magma, really hot magma. You can't actually verify that. You can't verify that the outer core is the source of the magnetic field. It can't be the inside because it's a Curie point. It's hotter than what would hold magnetism. So, I mean, like, basically what it comes down to when I debate people with the globe is they expect me to just grant them all their presuppositions while they're being super critical of anything I say. And it's basically like, explain the universe. Where, oh, you can't checkmate, you know? It's like, I just said that there's actually gravitational anomalies. The weight distribution doesn't directly match the latitude predictions of the globe, and they constantly change. And you can get weight differences of the same latitude, and there is no going to the South Pole and doing measurements. So it doesn't even
I mean,
help
you
the
can go
globe
to the
at all.
North Pole, can't you?
You can't go within like a certain amount of mileage of the direct North Pole, which is where you would get a 9-degree zenith angle. No, you can't fly a plane over it even. So,
Yeah, but you can still test the principles within a few degrees of the pole, can you not? Doesn't it show the same principle?
well, it wouldn't show the same principle, but sure, in theory, you can go all the way throughout the Earth and test it, and it doesn't work. It isn't consistent. There are gravitational anomalies, and they do not claim it's because of the magma of the core either. They claim because of density compositions and different mass compositions of underneath the Earth. There's like 12 different types of gravitational anomalies, many of which are not explained because sometimes the density doesn't answer it, the mass doesn't answer it. So there's all kinds of things that they make up because it's like a religion. But I'm explaining to you that even Einstein said that if the Earth is stationary and the sky moves over top or around the Earth, what it would do is translate motion down to the Earth. Like there would be a translation of force and motion to the Earth. And so if we do have centrifugal effects on the Earth, it would be explained by the sky moving over top of the Earth within the toroid. And even
Are you
Einstein
talking
would
about the
agree.
fluid drag through the atmosphere?
It doesn't even have to be through the Atmos, but sure, it would actually be through like a background meeting, seemingly. You think about it, if the Earth is stationary, the sky is moving, right? All the stars are
Sure.
moving. All right, so the stars are just moving over top of the Earth within this vortex of the ether, and that would translate motion down to the ether. It's called Mach's principle. I would say a version of that's what's really happening. You can't even believe in like
Through what
mainstream gravity
medium?
if you don't believe in it. What's up?
Like what is causing the Earth to spin? Because this like
The Earth doesn't
uh,
spin.
are you what are you explaining then? Because you're saying that
Owned, 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 owned.
we have this
Checkmate.
entity around the Earth, and that is moving. The skies, the stars, whatever that is moving, and that is being translated onto the Earth. Isn't that what you were saying?
I'm saying that yeah, the stars in the sky move
Sure.
over top of a stationary Earth,
Yeah.
and that will translate motion down to the Earth. not move the earth, just like the force and energy and motion will be translated down to the earth. Like if
The
motion's translated
force?
through a medium. Yeah, yeah. Like if I did this, if I move my hand
Yeah,
over
but what are
top of
the
a
two factors
bathtub,
of force?
what are the two factors of force?
Yeah, when you're calculating force, what are the two variables you need to have to calculate force?
Mass and acceleration.
Okay, well, if it's accelerating, then it's moving.
Oh, okay. That's what I just said. The stuff
No,
in
no,
the
no. You said
sky
the Earth was
moves.
stationary. It's just that the force. No, no,
Oh,
not the sky, the
God.
Earth. If
Why do
the
we need
force
the
is
earth to accelerate?
because you're applying a force to it. If there was no force being applied to it, then it wouldn't be accelerating, correct?
There's
If
a
acceleration
translate.
is zero, m times zero is zero. So that means zero force.
Really, what happens if you introduce a force that's not strong enough to move something?
Oh, there's
Are you
internal
saying that you
stresses.
can't do that?
There's internal stresses.
Okay. You mean we would have effects on the earth that would show us centrifugal effects, which we do.
No, no, no. I'm
Again, this
saying
is
there's
actually not
internal
even needed.
stresses. No, no, no. I'm saying if it's not moving and there's forces being applied, there's internal stresses. But for you to have an internal stress, you either need equal forces from opposite directions, or you need something that is much heavier in mass, like in the relationship that we have to the Earth, where we don't really move the Earth. If we're being crushed by like a car, it's not the Earth being pushed away from us, it's internal stresses on our bodies crushing our organs. In a similar way, there'd have to be something of equal magnitude and scale of us to the Earth on the opposite side of us that is opposing these forces and causing internal stresses on the Earth. But that's not what would happen, right?
That's just completely insane, dude.
No, no, no. This is physics. If you do a free
We
body
can
diagram
pretend
of
it's
this,
physics.
no, no, no.
You
You
you just
make a
probably
free
don't
body
even know what the
diagram.
Mach's principle is, man. So
Can you make a free body diagram of the Earth?
can you do a solve the 3-body equation within your model?
It's a free body diagram, not a three.
Can you do a 3-body problem?
Yeah, I could.
No, you can't. It's not solvable. There is no actual absolution.
I'll do it.
You cannot solve
Yeah,
with
I'm
an
way smarter than you. I
absolution.
could do it.
Okay, now you're really devolving. So, the point here is that even Einstein said that if the Earth is stationary, you would have a translation of motion to a stationary Earth, which would give you Coriolis and centrifugal effects that would drag the pendulum around. There's a very slight drift over top of the Earth. It moves 15 degrees per hour, seemingly moving with the stars. Moving, which the sidereal and solar rotation are slightly different, of course, and there's like a 4-minute difference.
But that's a
Okay,
prefatory clause.
what?
If. It's a prefatory. It's prefaced
Yeah.
with if.
Yeah.
If
Okay.
it's
Okay.
if
You mean
it's stationary.
if the Earth has a magma core that's
No,
made
no,
of
no.
so
If it's stationary, you have yet to prove it's stationary.
okay. Actually, Michelson-Morley proves that it's stationary. All evidence shows it's stationary. When we fly planes, we have to assume it's stationary. The way that you prove stationary is you try to measure motion and then you get a negative result. And we did that with the precision billions of times more than needed with Michelson-Morley's updated experiments, and it never shows the Earth is orbiting the sun.
You just mentioned that every 1 hour we see a 15-degree change. Is that not aligning with 360 degrees every 24 hours?
And does that not align with the sky moving in a perfect circle over top of us?
No.
Why not?
I don't know why we would be able to measure it if we're stationary. We're not measuring the change in the stars, right? We're measuring acceleration on Earth.
You're claiming that, but actually, like I said, even within your own paradigm, since you're so smart, then you would know that relativity says that the Earth stationary and the sky moving are interchangeable, and that it would translate motion down to a stationary Earth. Okay, so we need to determine if the Earth's
What
actually
does that
orbiting the
mean?
sun.
Translating energy onto a stationary Earth. What does that mean?
Yeah, so it's called Mach's principle. So you should read into it, man. It's cool if you haven't heard about it. You don't need to pretend you know about it. It's a letter from 1913 that would explain it to you within your own paradigm. If you disagree with what I'm saying, you disagree with Einstein and you disagree with relativity. Okay, it's just like I tried to tell you a second ago, but you're getting a little jumpy. If I had a bathtub and I move my hand over the bathtub, okay, even though I don't touch the water, there would be a translation of that force through the medium. It would transfer the force and motion and it would move the water. I don't have to physically touch it to move it. Okay. You get
Sure,
it?
but you're claiming the Earth is not moving.
That's right, because there's just a slight drift over top of a stationary Earth. The fact you're laughing shows that you're projecting intellectual ineptitude. I'm sorry that you're insecure. Right?
Well, what you're saying is you can have a moving object not touching an object and it will create translations on that object. And
Yeah,
then
did the bathtub
you're
move?
saying that the water is now the Earth, but it's also not moving in this. So it's
Did
just
my
not a good analogy.
No, you don't get it. Did the bathtub move when I moved my hand above it?
Actually, yeah.
No, the bathtub doesn't move. The water slightly moves, which is the whole point, is that there would be a translation of motion over top of the earth, and so you
You
could
do know that
detect it
that would
with
also
sensitive
move the bathtub,
you
right?
could no. Oh, if I did this over top of a bathtub, water, and the water moved, it would move the whole bathtub?
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow, now you're just evolving, so all right, it's 3 hours and 13 minutes. Hey, I'll give you the Glober intellectual honesty test because what the problem is most people don't know their own belief, right? And I think you do, but do you agree that relativity says you can't prove the Earth is orbiting around the sun from the Earth?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no way to prove it, so it's just a belief you have?
Uh, what are you asking exactly?
It's just
I
a
think I
blind
get it.
belief you have?
You're saying that relativity could equally say that everything is rotating around the Earth just as much as
Yeah,
the Earth is rotating around everything else, right?
correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all your frame of reference. If you took a geocentric Earth model or a heliocentric Earth model, all the math would yield the same.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
but I
yeah.
said, do you have any, like, actual so you agree you can't prove that the Earth orbits around the sun, right? It's just a belief you have because
Oh, I'm not here
Einstein
defending heliocentrism.
Oh, so you think the Earth is geocentric?
Well, the Earth is not geocentric. The solar system would be geocentric. I'm just saying that the Earth is round and gravity exists.
Can I ask more
Okay,
questions? I
so
just some came to my mind. I don't know how long you want to go, but I have some good questions. You're the best flat earther I ever met, so I want to hit you with these. I don't know if we'll ever talk
what's
again.
up? It's all good. Go ahead.
Um, 3 questions. I'll fire them all at you, and then you deal with them as you like. I'll make them quick.
Mhm.
What are the stars? And maybe this is just another I don't know, and that's fine if that's what the answer is. But what are the stars? Um, how do you explain the changes in constellations through the precession of the equinox in your model? And the other one, oh yeah, what about um, uh, what's it called? The astrology term where retrograde. How do you explain retrograde planetary movements?
Yeah. So same thing with the precession of the equinox and retrograde. It's just the cyclical nature of the sky moving itself or stuff moving within the sky. So like I can cite to you many astrophysicists or astronomers will tell you that you can completely explain retrograde and stellar aberration and the equinox all with no problem using a neo-tychonic system. And in fact, it's far more elegant and far more adaptable. The difference is just that the stuff in the sky is moving and they change how they move inside this giant cycle, which I would say is a torus field, which has the flower life and it progresses over time, etc. So that's really pretty easy. I guess what the globe claims is that whenever things move, like stars move, or they call parallax, they claim that it's because the Earth is tilted, wobbling, spinning, revolving, and actually the star doesn't move and it just moves position because we move. Well, no, it could just be the star moving. So very simple. That's how this all works. That's what relativity says as well.
I have a
Um,
question regarding that because in some ways the Earth acts kind of like a gyroscope. Don't we see these types of wobbles and precessions in gyroscopes,
uh, why are you
assuming it's
bringing up a
spinning?
gyroscope? A gyroscope maintained its rigidity in space. Yeah, that's
No, but
irrelevant.
there is loss of energy in a gyro and it wobbles.
So therefore, Earth's a ball that spins.
I mean, it according to the spinning ball model, wouldn't it make sense that there's a wobble?
Sure, according to Superman, wouldn't it make sense that he wears his cape when he goes and flies over New York City?
I mean, that analogy bears out, so I don't know what you're trying to own me
Let's
with,
go.
but
You're just basically just asking me, wouldn't it make sense if my belief was true? Like we're trying to figure out if your belief's true, man. It's all good. The other question that you asked, what was the first question? Was oh yeah,
What
what
are
are
the
stars?
stars? Yeah.
Yeah, so it looks like to me is there's a phenomenon called sonoluminescence. You can look up star in a jar. It's like really wild. It's dope regardless of what you think or believe, right? It's like if you sense really high intensity sound waves in a water, it'll actually create this little bubble that will then implode on itself with like high temperatures, and it'll create this like star in a jar of water. And so I think that the sky's actually fluid like medium. Even mainstream is kind of tiptoeing their way over to that. And so, yeah, I think that it could be cymatic patterns within a fluid-like medium that would give us sonoluminescence.
when you do this
Amazing.
star in a jar experiment, are those luminescent objects permanent or are they fleeting?
Well, it depends. If you have the vibrational pattern, the vibrational cymatic pattern, they would stay forever. So if
But
whatever
do
is
they?
creating the
I mean,
star, if they're constantly in this vibration of energy, it would stay there until it stops vibrating.
yeah, that's assuming that like everything is static, though, isn't it?
What?
Wouldn't that assume everything is static because the conditions required for the luminescence to occur in a certain space would be constantly moving?
Why would everything have to be static?
Because the stars are not like rapidly moving.
The stars are moving in the sky. You believe that they look like they're moving, but they're
Yeah,
not
but not
moving.
rapidly.
Well, how do you know? Because they move once a day. So what are you talking about?
Because you can look up and see the same constellation pretty much the same way every day.
Welcome
what
to
I mean
Flat
by they're
Earth,
not
bro. Like, you claim you're going like 11 vectors through space. How does the constellations repeating help you out?
Do you know how scale works?
Yeah, I know your religion very well. I just don't believe in it.
Religion? No, I believe in Jesus Christ, which is something you've refused to do.
Well,
this
then you
entire
just
stream.
didn't read the part of the Bible where he says that the earth is immovable and fixed, and that the sun stopped in Joshua, and he told Joshua that he made the sun stop, which in the globe earth model would literally kill everyone instantly. Or in Genesis.
sure.
In Genesis,
Are you-
I
you
never
a-
said you couldn't choose the frame of reference of Earth. I never said that we have to believe a heliocentric Earth model. I don't know why you're saying all these things. I never said
Okay,
that.
well, we can move on. So it says there are waters above us. It says that the earth takes shape like clay pressed under a sill, and it has 4 corners, but he drew like a circle inside the 4 corners, and he stretched out a firmament strong as bronze.
Yeah, but this would be really interesting if you believed in Jesus Christ. Like these are
I
great
do,
arguments.
but his actual name is Yeshua, and I
Okay.
do believe it. You're laughing at the Messiah's name is kind of sketchy, bro.
I'm laughing
Let's
at like
go.
phony theology, basically.
How do you know what my theology is? You're gonna
Yeah,
get smoked in this.
how do you
part of the
know?
debate.
How do I know?
Yeah.
There's a propensity for people to say Jesus' name in certain ways, depending on what their other theological
I have no problem
positions
with
are.
you saying Jesus. I'm just saying his name wasn't that. It doesn't matter. I defend the name Jesus as well. I think there's also power in that name. But like,
No, I don't say there's power in it. I think he is God himself. Do you think that?
well, he said that he wasn't, so that's weird.
Okay, dude.
Okay, he said that he was the divine Son of God, and he constantly pointed to the Father and said that's where you get salvation. So yeah, we're gonna have a theological. I get it. You have the mainstream Christian point of view. I don't judge you for it or whatever.
Mainstream Christian.
But you've
Yeah,
yet
what
to
kind of Christian am I?
understand the biblical account of creation. So it seems weird to me. Are you saying that the Hebrew cosmology was wrong and that Jesus, the Messiah, came to earth and didn't tell all the Hebrew people that their entire cosmology was wrong and the way that they interpreted Genesis was incorrect?
I defer to Scripture on every matter.
Then why are you not deferring to it regarding creation?
I've read the Bible. I don't see these verses. I don't know what translation you're using because I've also argued with flat earthers who are like Werner von Braun has Psalms 19:1 and it talks about the firmament. It's like, yeah, but I don't read King James version.
What version do you read?
I read in Koine Greek and I read the OSB Bible in the parts where I can't read in Koine Greek.
So do you ever consider looking at the Hebrew of the Old Testament since that's what it was written in?
I can't speak Hebrew, so I have to use the Koine translations.
You speak Greek?
I do.
That's what's up. So this is I don't want to get into a theological debate. It seems like you might be hyper focused on the New Testament, right? And that's cool. I think it's a beautiful part of the whole story. But anyway, the creation account is primarily in Genesis, and it says that there's a firmament, and it says that it separates the heavenly waters from the earthly waters, and it says that the heavenly waters came down to the earth and flooded the earth. That's what it says, right?
If you ring King James, it says right there firmament, but the Catholic, I'm not Catholic, but the Catholic Church did burn the KJV Bible for being like heretical.
The Catholic Church has changed everything that the Bible says, in my opinion.
Well, I'm not Catholic for a good reason, but
oh yeah, so that's not a good person to bring up, right? I mean, it's about the word in Hebrew is rakia, okay, and that means beaten out strong as bronze, a vault stretched over top of the earth. It says he stretches the vault out over top of the earth. And we are like grasshopper inhabitants within it. And he sits on top. He sits his throne on top of it, uses it as a footstool. So, I mean, that's what it says. I mean, I know some people think the Bible's crazy, but, I don't. I mean, I'm just saying this is not the argument. I can give you the best arguments. People claim that the waters above are actually the water vapor in the air. They claim that when it says immovable and fixed, it's just metaphorical about the earth. It's not literal. Everything's a metaphor. when it says the earth shall not be moved like 20 times, it doesn't really mean that. It says it's built on foundations. Well, it's just like metaphorical foundations of how the world will never be swayed away from God's will or whatever, like they make up all kinds of stuff. But the Hebrew cosmology was that the earth is a stationary topographical plane with a firmament and waters above it. And I think it's weird that the Messiah would come to earth and not tell all the Hebrew people they were wrong about what they think they lived on and that they were misinterpreting the first book. And to me, that's crazy. That doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to believe man and NASA, who is to deceive in Hebrew with a snake tongue, over the creator. But that's not why I believe in flat earth. That's what made me go re-examine the scriptures as potentially literally true. Like I don't bring up the Bible to argue for flat earth. But anyway,
Thoughts, HW?
I'm still a round earther. I know. Still around
it's okay, man. It's okay. It's a process.
Damn. Me too, but I think we might be outgunned here. I think we might be getting blown the F out right now.
I don't, because I'm still thinking about what you were saying about the Michelson-Morley and how the ether is moving in such a way that we see that 2% deflection or whatever. Wouldn't that need to be localized though? And the entire motion of the ether would have to be consistent because it's like a fabric basically.
Sorry, I was trying to fix this. Why wouldn't it need to be localized? Sorry, can you repeat the last part of it? I was trying to find the screen.
Since the ether is like, fabric's not a good word because fabrics are imagined as two-dimensional, but if we look at it as like a grid and there's this slight shift that accounts for that 2% like error you were talking about when they did the Michelson-Morley test, that would have to be localized because the motion of the ether would have to be uniform. Right? Wouldn't we be able to observe the motion of the ether uniform depending on wherever you do it on Earth?
Okay, so when we look at the Michelson-Gale-Pearson, which detects the sidereal rotation, it is relative to where you do it on the Earth. We use what's called a ring laser gyroscope, which uses the Sagnac effect. And that was, of course, discovered by Sagnac, who said that it's because of the vortex in the ether. And so it changes based on where you are in the vortex. When it comes to Michelson-Morley, it's testing a different aspect of creation, right? It's not testing what it is testing in Michelson-Gale-Pearson, which is sidereal rotation. So it just barely detects a slight drift based on like what direction you are. And that your side claims that, well, it technically always detects something, but it's probably just an error. It probably doesn't really have anything there. They claim that there's nothing there. And I'm claiming, I think it's detecting a slight something. With or without that, it doesn't matter. So
how are the differences depending on what position you are on the Earth?
It's the cosine, just like it is. It's based on your latitude, the sidereal rotation.
Okay, so you're saying at the
15 degrees per
equator.
hour.
Okay, but if I'm at the equator versus I'm at a different parallel, how does the 15 degrees change?
It's always 15 degrees per hour, right? But it's like in your paradigm, you detect a slightly different bit based on latitude because the Earth's a ball. And in my paradigm, the Earth's within the torus field. There's a vortex. You're moving without that outside that vortex. But one thing that's interesting is we actually took a gyroscope at the same latitude, because on the globe you go like closer to the north, so it's getting like smaller and smaller, right? And then like wider at the equator and then smaller and smaller. So it changes, like your degrees per hour changes, but then you use the cosine to make it 15 degrees, blah blah blah.
Your
Anyway,
degrees per hour doesn't change.
Once you use the cosine relative to latitude, actually the degrees detected does change relative to latitude on the globe. So anyway, when we went to different altitudes, we got different readings, but at the same latitude, which completely debunks the globe if that's true. Like why does it get different readings at different altitudes if we're still on the same latitude of the ball?
Because the atmosphere is not a uniform mass. The atmosphere is a fluid, and as the Earth is spinning, like a ball spinning in water, there's fluid drag. So you wouldn't get the exact same as if you were stationary on the ground. Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying you went on like mountains and stuff and it was different?
Yeah, even on like a mountain. Yeah, we were on a mountain. There's no answer though. Like the globe's answer is no, that didn't happen. Because it can't change on a globe. It has to be the same at the same latitude. It can't change. But on the
I
heat
understand
and
that, but something you're saying just doesn't make sense. Where when you're talking about the rotation, you're saying your the radians of rotation doesn't change depending on your latitude, right? It's still 24 hours to make a cycle.
okay, so you agree that if we go to a different elevation at the same latitude and get different precession in degrees, then that would debunk the globe.
No, that's not what I was addressing. You were saying that dependent on what latitude you are, you get different results using a laser gyroscope in terms of your degrees per hour. Is that what you said, or did I misunderstand you?
Yeah, you get different readings relative to latitude. That's what the globe claims.
I don't think it claims that.
Okay. You have to use a function to get back to the 15 degrees per hour. It's because you're on, like, if you look at a ball, it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So the amount that you're going to be rotating, the rate that you're going to be rotating is going to change. You have a
The
smaller
rate
distance.
has to do with instantaneous speed. The radians
Oh,
and the degrees of change is identical.
that's right. But it's based on the size of the ball, the amount that you have to move is decreasing closer and closer to the pole. Just look it up. You didn't know that that's like the gyroscope is relative to latitude, just like a pendulum allegedly precesses relative to latitude on the globe.
Maybe I'm thinking about it only in terms of one axis, but you're not. The rotation in terms of like rads per second does not change.
It's 15 degrees times the sine of the latitude.
And what does that yield?
It's going to give you your reading. It's going to, according to the globe, the whole globe turns around and we detect it with gyroscopes.
Sure.
Right. So in what you're going to actually detect is going to be relative to where you are on the globe, because you're on different places of a globe. I mean, you can just look into this, man, because I know it's been like 3.5 hours. I don't mind you guys. Your friend's definitely pretty chill, but I don't want to be on here forever. It's 2:30. All I was trying to tell you is, according to the globe, and you can look it up, I'm not lying to you, man. Like, according to the globe, it changes relative to latitude. But if you